Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular council meeting of Tuesday, April the 13th. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The city of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all treaty people. Just before we get going on the agenda today, it's my pleasure to read 3 proclamations this evening. The first is my pleasure to proclaim Vaisakhi, April 13th and 14th, 2021 in the city of Beaumont. Whereas nearly 700,000 people in Canada and more than 90,000 in Alberta trace their origins to the South Asia region of Punjab. And whereas the people of Punjab have helped shape Alberta's history dating back to the early 1900s and continue to make important contributions to the social, economic, political, and cultural fabric of the province. And whereas Punjabi is the most common mother tongue among Beaumont residents after English and French. And whereas Punjab has a diverse population, including people of many faiths, including Sikhs and Hindus. And whereas Vaisakhi is a historical and religious festival in April observed by people of the Sikh and Hindu faiths, marking the Hindu Solar New Year and the birth of the Khalsa and Articles of Faith for Sikhs. And whereas Beaumont welcomes citizens from all over the world and takes pride in the community's cultural diversity. And whereas Vaisakhi is an opportunity to create awareness of Punjabi Canadians in Beaumont and celebrate their contributions to the community. And whereas Beaumont Council aims to celebrate the contributions and aspirations of people from all backgrounds and walks of life and develop a greater understanding and appreciation for the community's rich, unique, and diverse culture. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim April 13th and 14th, 2020 as Vaisakhi in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 31st day of March, 2021. Our next proclamation on the agenda this evening is for Earth Day, April 22nd, 2021. Whereas the global community now faces extraordinary challenges such as global health issues, food and water shortages, and economic struggles. And whereas all people, regardless of race, gender, income, or geography, have a moral right to a healthy, sustainable environment with economic growth. And whereas it is understood that the citizens of the global community must step forward and take action to create a green economy to combat the aforementioned global challenges. And whereas a green economy can be achieved on the individual level through educational efforts, public policy, and consumer activism campaigns. And whereas it is necessary to broaden and diversify this global movement to achieve maximum success. And whereas the city of Beaumont hereby encourages its residents, businesses, and institutions to use Earth Day to celebrate the earth and commit to building a sustainable and green economy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2021 as Earth Day in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated this 13th day of April, 2021. And our last proclamation of the evening is for Probus Month of April 2021, where it is recognized that the Leduc Region Probus Club has a vital purpose, which is to stimulate thought, learning, interest, and participation in activities at a time in life when it is easy to become complacent and self-centered. And whereas the Leduc Region Probus Club is made up of retired or semi-retired professional business or like responsible persons from the local community. And whereas the Leduc Region Probus Club provides ongoing Zoom or meeting activities to those residents from the region who in retirement appreciate and value opportunities to meet others in similar circumstances and of similar level of interest. And whereas the city of Beaumont encourages and supports the development of fraternal associations, service clubs, and other voluntary associations. And whereas the Leduc Region Probus Club joins 256 clubs and 38,000 probians in celebration of 34 years in Canada. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim April 2021 as Probus Month in the city of Beaumont, Alberta, dated the 6th day of April, 2021. Whew. Appreciate everybody's time for those this evening. City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration has no changes to the agenda this evening.
Can I get a member of council willing to move the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
Move, Your Worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? 7, that carries unanimously. We really only have one item on the consent agenda this evening, so we're just gonna roll right through. Open forum, unless something's changed, we have no members of the public wishing to speak in the open forum. No. All right, which brings us to item 5, adoption of the minutes. Adoption of regular council meeting minutes of March 23rd, 2021. Is there a member of council willing to move adoption of the minutes as presented? Councillor Barnhart.
Willing to move that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? There we go. That carries unanimously. Which brings us to the first item on the agenda, item 6A, 6A, B, C, and D. We're going to do a public hearing on 3 bylaws this evening. Bylaw 994-21, 996-21, 1001-21, the Reeve Area Structure Plan, the Reeve Neighborhood Structure Plan, and the Land Use Bylaw Redistricting as appropriate. Just before we open up the public hearing, just a reminder, we're going to be doing something a little different tonight. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be in one public hearing, all 3 bylaws at the same time. So my intention though is to still take it one bylaw at a time. So if we're looking at items on the in this agenda, we're in the area structure plan and it takes the whole quarter. That's the appropriate time to ask those types of questions of the presenters. If it's the one neighborhood that's under consideration, if that's where you're focused, the appropriate time to ask questions on that one would be bylaw 996-21. And if there's something in relation to the redistricting and the types of buildings that would go on in the land uses of the specific redistricting areas for that neighborhood, the appropriate place to ask those questions is land use bylaw amendment, bylaw 10021, the redistricting, second and third reading. So at this point, we will declare the public hearing open and states that the hearing is being held pursuant to sections 23606 and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended, and legislative services.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am going to admit our applicant representatives into the meeting. So I'm just going to do that now, and then I'll make some introductions. We have Stephen Yu and Rob Dolvoet of Invistic Consulting Incorporated. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you.
And now, through you to members of council and the public, I can confirm that the purpose of bylaw 994-21 is to adopt the LaRev Area Structure Plan, that the purpose of bylaw 996-21 is to adopt the LaRev Southwest Neighborhood Structure Plan, and that the purpose of bylaw 1001-21 is to amend bylaw 944-19, Beaumont Land Use Bylaw, to redistrict a portion of the LaRev Southwest neighborhood. These bylaws are related and will be dealt with together. I can confirm that notice of the public hearing for bylaws 994-21, 996-21, and 1001-21 were given in writing to the assessed landowner, the adjacent landowners, the applicant, Leduc County, and school boards and other agencies. That the public hearing notices of bylaws 994-21, 996-21, and 1001-21 were advertised in the local newspaper on April 2nd, 2021, and April 9th, 2021. That the public hearing notices for bylaws 994-21, 996-21, and 1001-21 were advertised on Beaumont's website beginning March 26, 2021. And that administration has received no written submissions before or after the publication of this agenda package. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So as we get going, I'd just reminder to everyone that's giving presentations, please speak loudly, clearly, introduce yourself as we go. Try to keep them brief and to the point. It's a large agenda this evening. As we're dealing with 3 different bylaws over what seems to be 200 pages of an agenda, if you're referring to something specific, please, if you can give us a reference page number so we can all find it quickly and easily, that would be great. So first up is the Director of Planning and Development, or their designate. So understand Mr. Stephen Rates is presenting tonight on behalf of our administration.
Yes, good evening, Council. I'll just be sharing my screen. We've set up a presentation to support our verbal remarks tonight, as we'll be covering the process that led us to this point and just make sure that we're clear in how this is being presented, as we do know we're covering multiple files tonight in a more unique circumstance. So yes, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. We are here tonight to for the public hearing for 3 proposed bylaws, which would approve area statutory plans and to also amend the land use bylaw with respect to the proposed La Rev neighborhood area. And so just a brief outline of today's presentation, just providing enough a strong amount of context to understand what got us to here. I'll outline the purpose of today's process, review the application, the proposal itself, and then outline the timelines and processes that went into this process, and then present administration's recommendation and then discuss those potential next steps. And just to clarify, the La Rev area is located in Northeast Beaumont, east of 50th Street and north of Township Road 510. And so just as a reminder, a public hearing within the land development process. So we provide this public hearing process as stipulated by the Municipal Government Act prior to 2nd and 3rd reading for all applications. And so due to the interconnected nature of all 3 bylaws, in our presentation, we'll provide this within the same public hearing opportunity. And then later within the agenda, after the public hearing has been closed, we will move through each bylaw separately, and administration will provide a much more brief presentation, just again, presenting each bylaw separately. We'll need to, if we're moving through, or to move through the entire process, approving the area structure plan would come first. If that is completed, then the neighborhood structure plan can be approved. And if that is completed, then we can move into the redistricting approval. The city will also, so this is one part of the public engagement process, but the city will outline the other opportunities that have been throughout the process so far. And so these engagement opportunities have provided the opportunity for the applicant to engage with the public, listening to and responding to concerns as they were raised throughout the process. The city reviewed the proposed process for engagement for all 3 applications and approved this approach, ensuring that it was in alignment with the city's public engagement policy. And so the public hearing presents an opportunity for members of council to directly engage with both members of the public, if they are joining us, the applicant, as well as members of administration. That latter half, when we move into the separate bylaws, that is when members of council will be able to engage directly with administration. But because the public hearing is closed, it would be just questions relayed between those 2 entities. So for the first application, the purpose of bylaw 99421, as described earlier, is to approve an area structure plan for the northeast portion of Beaumont. This provides guidance for the sequence of development, the land uses, the density of population, and the general location of major transportation and utility infrastructure. As review, of course, an area structure plan can be adopted by council for the purposes of providing this framework for subdivision and development. The applicant, Invistech Consulting Limited, proposes that the La Rev area structure plan will facilitate the development of approximately 4,311 new dwelling units over the time of its development, creating space for approximately 10,966 residents at full build out, which is staged and sequenced over several years. This achieves a density of 37.3 dwelling units per net residential hectare, which meets the requirements of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan. The proposed land uses are depicted in the land use concept, which is presented right here within the presentation. The transportation and network and visioning for servicing and utilities are outlined within section 4 of the plan. And I do not have page numbers directly in front of me, but when we get to questions, I'll be sure to refer to those. Administration has worked closely with the applicant to review this plan and the supporting documentation, ensuring consistency with various strategic plans that guide the City of Beaumont's growth and development. And so this suite of plans that we have ensured alignment with would include the regional planning documents, the municipal development plan, the strategic plan, and other municipal master plans. Administration's view is that this area structure plan is consistent with the city's overall policy framework. And so now shifting down a layer to the neighborhood structure plan, the purpose of this bylaw would be to approve the neighborhood structure plan for the southwest portion of the overall LaRev area. This, of course, again, provides sequence of development for a more specific area, describing land uses, more specifically the design of transportation infrastructure or utility infrastructure more specifically, and getting closer to enacting the policy direction that's outlined within those higher level plans. The applicant, Invistech Consulting, again, proposes that the LaRev neighborhood structure plan would facilitate the development of 1,023 new dwelling units within this sub area, and would create space for 2,644 residents at full build out, which again is several years into the future. And so for this neighborhood structure plan, the proposed density would be 36.9 dwelling units per net residential hectare, which again meets the requirement of the Edmonton, or further enacts the requirement of the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan. And so again, here is the land use concept for this focused area within the larger area structure plan. The high level approach to utilities and transportation is outlined within section 4 of the plan. And this provides guidance for transportation network infrastructure and servicing, as well as sanitary storm water servicing and other utility components. And again, administration worked closely with the applicant to review this plan and has ensured that it has aligned with all similar policies listed before, as well as the proposed area structure plan for this area. And again, our view is that administration's view is that the neighborhood structure plan aligns with all of these plans, is consistent with the overall policy direction. And so the last layer that we're working through tonight would be this final bylaw of 1021, which is to amend the land use bylaw and redistrict certain areas of the proposed LaRev neighborhood. So this would make up the north half of the southwest neighborhood structure plan. The land use bylaw would control the use and development of land and buildings in this, or in Beaumont overall. And in this application, it amends the land use district map to create, to shift from agricultural redistrict from agricultural holdings district to commercial, as well as integrated neighborhood district. The commercial neighborhood district is proposed to be a portion along 50th Street and provides employment opportunities with various commercial and office uses. The integrated neighborhood district is proposed for the eastern side of the subject lands and would provide a variety of housing options with integrated local commercial or other complementary land uses. And administration's view is that this redistricting proposal is consistent with the city's overall policy framework, as listed before, as well as the area structure plan, and most pertinently, the land use concept within that area structure plan, as well as the neighborhood structure plan and that land use concept. And so just moving into the process that went into moving these forward. This is a general outline with how the City of Beaumont processes land development applications for statutory plans, as well as redistricting. And we just want to run through this to make clear how the process lined up for each and how it met the requirements of the process. The administration would be reviewing an application, deeming it complete, ensuring it is ready to be circulated to internal and external entities. The required documentation would vary for each application, but generally provides supplementary documentation that's provided alongside the area structure plan to support the findings of that area structure plan or neighborhood structure plan. that supportive documentation is more technical in nature and focuses on analysis of historical, engineering, agricultural, or environmental concerns. Once we have ensured that is all complete and ready to be circulated, we circulate to all internal departments for comment, as well as externally to school boards, neighboring municipalities, utility providers, provincial agencies, and regional commissions. And the city would collate all of these comments and provide them to the applicant. And during this period of circulation, the applicant will also undertake engagement activities for area and adjacent landowners, as well as the public. And so all portions of that engagement that the applicant undertakes is in alignment with what the city requires for engagement on these matters. After comments from both the circulation and engagement are reviewed, updates to the plan and supporting documentation are undertaken as required. And once the entire application meets administration's expectations for plans or applications of this nature, the application can be finalized and then is brought forward to first reading for council, and then subsequently brought forward to a public hearing that we're at today. And just to showcase the timelines over the last few months, the area structure plan was, of course, received in August, and the referral period and public engagement ran approximately from September 9th to October 14th. This involved mail-outs, email circulation, print advertisements, as well as in-person socially distanced engagement events. Then the ASP was, after that process was complete, the ASP was reviewed and updated by the applicant based on the comments that we captured within that circulation and engagement period. At that point, that is when we received both the neighborhood structure plan and the redistricting application. And so the neighborhood structure plan was received first, and its circulation and engagement period ran approximately from November 20th, to December 14th. So it's shifted a little bit to the left there than what is actually presented on the screen, but that's what we're working with. And the redistricting application was brought in at the end of that neighborhood structure plan circulation, and that redistricting referral circulation engagement ran from December 10th to January 6th. And so during that period of circulation engagement for both the neighborhood structure plan and the redistricting, the area structure plan was reviewed and finalized, ensuring that we could refer to a higher level document and ensure that our comments would find alignment or locate alignment and prove alignment with the subsequent planning applications. And the area structure plan moved forward for first reading in January. And at that point, we were able to finalize both the neighborhood structure plan and redistricting. And we're able to hold those documents in their current status as the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board Regional Evaluation Framework review was completed, which is a requirement within the growth plan for area structure plans. Subsequent planning efforts and applications do not go through that process. So the area structure plan needs to complete that, and then we can move forward with all three at this time. So this is basically the process that's gotten to us where we are at today, and ensures that we were able to find alignment between alignment streaming down from the area structure plan to the neighborhood structure plan to the redistricting. And so I'll just move to this final slide describing how potential next steps could work. In the subsequent, after the public hearing is closed, the bylaw goes forward for second and third reading separately. And so the area, like I said earlier, the area structure plan would need to be approved first, then the neighborhood structure plan could follow. And if both are completed, then the redistricting could be completed as well. And we're available for further questions and information within second and third reading. Members of the public, if they were attending, or the applicant can answer questions within this public hearing, but would not be able to answer questions within second and third reading. So just want to clarify that distinction. And of course, that last point just outlines that process of one needing to come before the other. And so that concludes administration's presentation. And we appreciate your time and are available for questions throughout the remainder of the public hearing, as well as we move into that second and third reading process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rains. Appreciate it. That's a very comprehensive flow through. It was well done. Just before I just want to confirm for members of the public and members of council that members of the public that are watching online, confirm with the city clerk that we don't currently have anybody else in the waiting room waiting to participate in the public hearing.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council and the public, I do not have anyone waiting in the waiting room, and I have received no registrations from the public to speak this evening.
Okay, and so that's going to allow this process to go a little differently, a little more smoothly. So what I'm going to do is open it up to members of council for questions of our administration about the processes that were followed. My intention is I will then let the applicant make a presentation, and then we will take questions from members of council on each individual bylaw. Just to keep it straightforward, organized as we go, as there is currently nobody waiting to speak in favor or opposed or deeming themselves affected. So this public hearing is going to turn into a question and answer session for council. So here we go. So open it up to questions from members of council about the process that got us to this point. And if there are none, you can always ask them later if they come to you. But if there are none, we will then move to the applicant making their presentation. Okay, I see no raised hands from members of council about the process. I will open it up to the applicant. Mr. Stephen Yu, are you going to be doing this tonight?
That's correct, yes.
Cool. So the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Stephen Yu, and tonight I will be presenting on LaRev. Big thanks to Stephen Race for giving his very comprehensive presentation. LaRev is a gateway community designed for Beaumont. Located in the recently annexed lands, this community transitions between Beaumont's existing neighborhoods to the south and the city of Edmonton to the north. It will be the first new area structure plan to be prepared following the city's adoption of our complete community, our connectivity, and our zoning blueprint. LaRev is a community that is livable. The land use concept incorporates a variety of land uses to provide a range of housing options, opportunities for employment, and access to interconnected parks and open spaces. The community is designed to achieve a more complete community. LaRev is a community that is connected. The most prominent feature of LaRev is a district park located centrally, designed to be the focal point of the community. The district park is intended to not just be a gathering place for residents of LaRev, but for all residents of Beaumont. It is intended to be a space for formal gatherings, such as festivals and events, while also offering active and passive recreation opportunities. It is a space that is interconnected with the rest of the community and Beaumont and the rest of the city through its active transportation network. LaRev is a community that is innovative. It is a community that includes varying densities and housing types, integrates environmental features, and incorporates commercial uses at varying scales. It will evolve and be more resilient to changing market and economic conditions. LaRev is a community that is livable, that is connected, and that is innovative. It is a community that embraces the character of Beaumont while providing amenities for both current and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation this evening. So at this point, we will now open it up to questions from members of council for both our administration and the applicant. We'll start with bylaw 994-21, the LaRev area structure plan. Do members of council have questions on the area structure plan this evening? Seeing none, Councillor Stout.
Sorry, I'm a little slow on the draw there. My apologies. And I'm not sure if this is the appropriate place to ask this question, but I'm sure you'll tell me if I'm wrong. Looking through the area structure plan, I noticed that there's no provision for the multi-use trail connection between Beaumont and 41 Street or the edge of Edinburgh, and ultimately to Ellerslie. Although that is, I was looking through the supporting documents, and that is what's listed in Open Space and Trails Master Plan. That is shown there as a proposed trail, but it's shown on the west side of 50 Street as opposed to the east side. So I suppose then that it wouldn't be in the area structure plan here. And the reason I'm raising it now, though, I assume then that trail, potential trail, would be in an area structure plan for the west side of the of 50 Street. So question for administration really then is, can you, before I vote to not build that trail on the east side of 50 Street in this area structure plan, which I'll be doing if I support this area structure plan, then can you offer me any reassurances that that trail will appear in area structure plan for the other side of the road?
Very much just a quick reminder to council, we're not talking about how we're voting, we're just asking questions.
Yes.
Mr. Race.
So through your worship to Councillor Stout, you were correct in that in higher level plans, as well as in this plan, the multi-use path or multi-way trail connection is envisioned on the west side of 50th Street. And so it's not directly incorporated within any land use concept or transportation network that would be built out as a part of the sequence of development for the Le Rêve area. However, it is identified, similarly to other adjacent transportation infrastructure like 50th Street or a future collector roadway at the north end of the neighborhood, in that this is infrastructure that will be available and will support citywide or regional connections for folks living in Le Rêve or those visiting Le Rêve. And I think the key piece to just clarify is that although, yes, it's not part of this neighborhood structure plan, but would be included not part of this planning process basically, but would be part of future processes. Within this planning process though, the transportation network that the city is comfortable is comfortable with being outlined within this planning process ensures there is connections throughout the neighborhood to this more citywide and regional active transportation connections.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers my question. I guess there's can I ask a supplementary?
Well, go ahead.
So then building on that, Mr. Rates, I noticed that there are 1, 2, 3 active active transportation network connections shown crossing 50 Street in this area structure plan, presumably to get access. Part of that would be to connect with that multi-use trail that we've just discussed on the west side of 50 Street. Can you give me any indication of what, I'm just thinking that 50 Street there is a 4-lane divided highway, 80-mile-an-hour speed limit. What provision would there be for crossing as a multi-use trail there? Or is envisaged in the area structure plan?
So through your worship to Councillor Stout, those finer details of what exactly a crossing at those points could look like is not fully contextualized or presented within the plan, because those are sort of the finer details that would need to be developed, thought out, and implemented within subsequent parts of the planning process. At this stage, we are just identifying that active transportation corridors within this community, this future community, would align in a certain way to draw trips eventually onto that more regional connection. I think the final point I'll just bring up here is that within the area structure plan, so I kind of got to cross channels here, but within the area structure plan, that's at high level that draws those connections across 50th Street, and within the subsequent neighborhood structure plans, we'll see more closely planned active transportation crossing points, which is done within the Southwest neighborhood structure plan. On page 128, you can see that there are those potential active modes crossings
yes.
identified in those locations. there's strong policy direction in place in multiple plans across the city that would indicate that some kind of connection at these points is required to ensure there's a connected active transportation system. And so it's that, further north along the corridor, and as the planning process plays out on the west side of 50th Street, we get further details on what exactly that would look like. But there are provisions in place within the neighborhood structure plan that more clearly state that there would be active modes crossings in certain locations provided.
Okay, thank you. So this is conceptual at this point, that those crossings will exist, that the details of what they'll actually be is yet to be worked out. Is that what you're saying?
Through your worship to Councillor Stout, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a reminder, we're just talking about the area structure plan right now. We'll have Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Hendricks. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Stephen. Mr. Rates, this may not be the area structure plan, maybe the neighborhood one, but my question is around 510 and that roadway there. So a traffic impact assessment, do you want to talk about that now, or is that a better question to raise during the neighborhood structure plan?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, it is interconnected. I think we can more directly address it once we get to the neighborhood structure plan side of things. At this point, I can say that within the area structure plan piece, the Township Road 510 is described within the area structure plan as something that will be built to an urban arterial standard, and that the technical documents that supported the area structure plan outlined that and reviewed it in a technical capacity, but we can speak more to that when we get to the neighborhood structure plan.
Okay, you can expect that question from me. And a second question, if I may, Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, it's regarding the agricultural impact. Again, I know that redistricting talks about that, and I want to ask my questions at the appropriate time, but it's all interrelated. So I'm just wondering if, again, the question is best left until the third one.
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, an agricultural impact assessment was completed in conjunction with the area structure plan application. So the high-level technical analysis that supported the planning process for this area would have been completed in conjunction with the area structure plan. So we can reflect on this now. Some of the finer details around sequencing and staging and fragmentation, or the avoiding of fragmentation, would maybe be a little bit further along, but we should be good to answer some high level stuff here.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's high level enough, but the question that has come up in conversations at the Regional Agricultural Master Plan Task Force was around what happens when we take away some of the good soil, where does it go? And so I'm just questioning that in terms of our own process. Does that soil become the property of the developers, the owners? Just give me a little bit of insight into where that goes.
So through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, I'll take the first stab at this one, but may defer. That is one of those more procedural and implementation related aspects of the planning process that falls outside of the high level scope that's covered within the area structure plan. I guess just to briefly review what's covered within this area structure plan, that's focused on ensuring we do not fragment or take productive soil offline before it is ready for urban development, basically. And so there is, concerted policy direction within this high-level plan that ensures that we are maintaining productive soil for as long as possible. That piece around the soil itself being transferred is beyond the scope of the area structure plan, of the neighborhood structure plan, and in some terms, the redistricting as well.
So I won't get the answer today then.
So through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, I may defer to Mr. Wong or Mr. G in this point, but to my understanding, it would be beyond.
It's more of a policy decision regarding the use of that soil, or does it come down to the individual owners make that decision?
I think I can take a step on this, Councillor Barnhart. with regarding to the topsoils, because according to the geotechnical studies, yes, there is a layer of topsoils, and then there is a layer of organic matters underneath. So during the construction process, a lot of the that layer, particularly the organic, because they cannot reuse it, they have to discard those. If I'm correct on that one, I'm not a geologist, but reading the geotechnical recommendations, that is what is usually do, because the organic matters, they cannot sustain for the construction of, particularly in the basement. But with regarding to your question, particularly what to do with the good quality soil, there is no policy directions on how to deal with the soil. Maybe that is we can work with the applicant, the developer, when they prepare the land, when they grade the land. There may be an opportunity to work with them to preserve or make use of those soils. I believe that, in the Edmonton Metropolitan, the RAM, the discussions there may be an opportunity to take the soils to another area, so the soil itself is not lost. So it can be reused on some other land area, but currently there is not a policy like that. But we can definitely work with the developers to see what we can do with the good soil.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. I realize I'm off topics and I can see that I need to.
I was going to say, I got to pull everybody back up to the 30,000
Always in the
feet of,
weeds.
we're not here to discuss construction. We're here to discuss land use. But it is a good question though, and it is timely because of the discussion that is currently going on at the MRB in regards to grade A farmland and soil. But for the purposes tonight, I am going to pull council back up to the area structure plan as we go forward. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Just further to the discussion that Councillor Stout was having earlier and the indication on page 128, just wondering, how did we get to the point where the active network is on the west side of the road when Edmonton has it coming down the east side of the road? Why does Beaumont need to be different there? How did we get to this point?
So through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, the greater history here would be that trail was outlined within the municipal development plan in the process of the development of that plan, which would have occurred, over the past 5 to 7 years, to my understanding, and that would have also been instilled within the transportation master plan, which was brought forward last August and approved. So that decision to align on the west side of 50th Street was determined at a higher level in the planning process, in that municipal development plan process, basically, which would have included engagement and conversations with the city of Edmonton. And so I do not have directly in front of me or a strong understanding of exactly where that city of Edmonton connection will be, but as development process rolls out and is implemented, that corridor will, as it is key for private automobiles, as it is key for transit, it will be key for active transportation as development closes in along the corridor. So I'm not sure exactly what the alignment is within the city of Edmonton currently, or where it is stipulated within the planning documents as well, looking further into the future. But these decisions would have been come to in the past 5 to 7 years, and we're working with this alignment now. And I think if we get to a point where there's a concern and we see misalignment, the planning process can accommodate for that as well, either within the city of Edmonton or within the city of Beaumont, when we get to the point of getting closer to actually implementing that connection.
Yeah, follow up? Yeah, I think I would wave that flag today. Going up 50th Street, the trail is along the east side, and I do understand it takes quite a few votes and a lot of planning to get to this point, but I think when you see something on paper that doesn't align, and then we're going to take and introduce risk to potential users to cross what is a very busy road, short of putting an underpass in, how do you, we've put more risk in. So, I guess my concern still remains that, we have a blue line going up the west side and Edmonton's Trail is coming down the east side. And, this isn't the first time that you've heard from myself, wondering when and how we make sure that that connection is built. And I think I've had administration answer that a few times. And, now you see it all come together, and one's on the west and one's on the east. That's the trouble I have tonight with this. So thanks to Councillor Stout for, starting up the line of questioning on this. And, that remains my concern. So thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, maybe I can add a little bit to the conversations there, and with particularly to the long-term planning of the active transportation network between City of Edmonton and City of Beaumont along 50th Street and actually to the broader regional part. We have that intermunicipal planning framework agreement with both the City of Edmonton and the Ladue County, and that is that we the three municipalities will undertake collaborative planning to address this kind of questions. And within the intermunicipal planning framework, there is all this servicing and transportation network, and active transportation is included in that. So we will be working with the partners, the three partners will be working together to make sure there is the regional connections. So yeah, it won't be today, but it definitely would happen, yeah. That is what I can assure the council. Yeah.
All right, just before we get into, see Councillor Stout's hands up again, before we get into round 2 of questions, are there any more councillors wishing to get in on round 1? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. This should be a quick one from me, I think. Looking at the area structure plan, I noticed that Rural Road 240 is designated as an arterial route. Does that mean it's going to be upgraded to full asphalt and all the other standards at some point during the development?
So through your worship to Councillor Stout, as the development process moves forward and the sequencing of development occurs, the upgrading of that road would occur in alignment with how development is reaching out into those areas near 240. But that is also an area where it is right on the boundary between I think 240. I'm just trying to exactly align that in my mind, but it is right on the boundary. So that is further conversations with the City of Edmonton in that regard of when that would be improved. But yes, as would development occur, the upgrading of that road would also occur.
Okay, yes, thank you. Follow on, just quickly. And I noticed as well that, and it's alluded to in the document itself, I noticed that on the southern end of 240, where it meets 510, that there is a diversion proposed to align it, to better align it, but that takes it into what I think is City of Edmonton land. So the document refers to negotiations having to take place or discussions. Could you just address that for me? How would that be resolved? What would be needed to make that for us to actually, I guess my question really is, we're passing an area structure plan that includes that, but doing that actually depends on another municipality agreeing that yes, they're going to allow that to happen. The road, as shown, strays out of our municipal boundary, even though it's part of an area structure plan we're now being asked to approve.
Yeah, page number on that?
I'm sorry? Yeah, I'm just trying to find it. I can get it to you in a moment. Okay, I'm looking, for instance, at page. Oh, that's the wrong page. Just a moment.
On page 54. Sorry to interrupt. Page 54 of the agenda package. And I'll roll into answering that question through your worship to Councillor Stout regarding the future collector roadway identified. So this has been part of the application throughout, and in circulating the document, the area structure plan to the city of Edmonton. This was something that was reviewed by them, and that direction provided was for policy direction to be included that would direct for negotiations to occur in the future about the exact alignment of that road, the exact placement. Really that occurs due to environmental features just north of that northwest corner of the area structure plan. And so the city of Edmonton understands that constraint in that location, and specific feedback that they provided was that further negotiation would occur in the future as development reaches out into the extent of the area structure plan, knowing that that is several years in the future for Beaumont as well as the city of Edmonton.
So thank you. So I guess what I'm wondering is, if for some reason we couldn't agree with Edmonton as to where that road was, as to making that diversion, would we, would our recourse have to be to leave it on its existing path?
Or annex it, the chunk of land needed.
So through your worship to Councillor Stout, I think the direction received from the city of Edmonton with regard to this part of the planning application was that they wanted to ensure negotiations would occur with regard to the exact alignment. And so I think our perception of that is that they want to have a fulsome discussion of what that road will end up looking like, and not if that road will occur. That was the comments provided to the city of Beaumont from the city of Edmonton. So I think we can be assured that, this is a high level concept and that there is a line on a map somewhere. The city of Edmonton has stated that negotiation should occur in the future on the exact placement of that. But it was not flagged as something that would never occur.
Okay, so they're willing in principle to do it, but okay, to be negotiated. Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there.
Appreciate that. Seeing no further requests to speak, we'll move to questions on bylaw 996-21, the neighborhood structure plan. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Now, again, I hope I'm asking the questions at the right place, but I'm looking at page 48 of 213, page 31 of the report, and it's about the residential, the density. And my question is around the high density. There's only one square that I can see there of high density. The rest are medium. And I was just wondering how much the goal of meeting the density target is dependent upon that particular property, and how tall is that property going to be? How many units is possible there?
So through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, so this is, I think if we're talking about page 48, this is back to the area structure plan. So I think we're still good.
Yeah, I knew I'd get it wrong.
Oh, it's all good. But I think we're good to go through this question, but then we'll head back to the neighborhood structure plan. But the location of the higher density the higher density land use area within the area structure plan is, yes, outlined on page 48 within the area structure plan. And this does play a role within that overall density target, knowing that each of these smaller pieces is going to contribute in a smaller way and maybe above or below. what was actually envisioned for low or medium or high density. And so we wouldn't be able to speak to, the exact unit count or the exact unit within that specific area, or sorry, density within that specific area. But, the implementation of these plans is something that administration is able to track as applications for redistricting, subdivision, and development come in. We would be tracking the density of development to ensure that we are reaching that overall. And so that high density residential piece plays a strong part in meeting that. But we would be able to follow along the way as development occurs to either flag as a concern as development is occurring, we're trending below. We need to start finding ways to integrate, make medium density that's not too low, but a little bit higher than that medium density. So yeah, we don't have the specifics on what exactly that would look like at this point, but we have a way of tracking it along the way.
When does council have an opportunity to speak to that specifically? Is that at what developmental stage do we actually know where it's going to be exactly? I mean, we're kind of being asked to approve something in concept, but then anytime we ask a detailed question, it's coming later, it's coming later, it's coming later. That doesn't feel very comforting to me in terms of, are we going to have 10 tall buildings there to meet the density target because we've allowed all of the others to be low density? That's my concern.
Mr. Wong?
Yeah, maybe I can add to Mr. Rade's comment on your questions, Councillor Beinhardt. If we refer to the area structure plan, that is page 71 of the package, there is the land use statistics there. You are referring to the land use map, land use concept map, and you refer to just one parcel that is labeled as high density residential. According to the ASP, this one parcel is approximately 1.33 hectares, and they are proposing 100 units per hectare, and that is why on this particular site there is 133 units. So the area structure plan at this point of time doesn't speculate the build form. The ASP would talk about high density being, this is how many units are being built, how many people per dwelling units, and that is why we come up with the total populations for this one land use category. But in terms of the build form, council would have an idea of what it looks like, what is allowed under the land use bylaw, land use district, because the land use district will control the land use and also the build form of the physical structure. So whatever that is, the land use bylaw allowed would be the maximum height of the building, if I can say that. And actually, at the end of the day, it will be at the subdivision stage, that is creating the lot, and at the development permit stage, that is the development permit of the actual building itself. So, but what council tonight will be approving is the land use direction for the ASP. In this case, where the council would be agreeable to the land use concept proposed on the ASP land use concept, with this variety of land use from low density, medium, and high density residential, the commercial area, mostly along 50th Street, and a couple on the east side of the neighborhood that will be more neighborhood commercial type, and the storm ponds and the recreation, the parks and open space with the linkages, right? So I think that is where the ASP and in some aspects, the NSP will be alluded to. So there is this land use and statistic table would provide you with that a little bit of information, but it doesn't provide you with what kind of build form the developer is proposing. Yeah.
And Mr. Wong, when does that come? When does that come at the, not at the neighborhood? It doesn't come to a subdivision?
It will, council would be able to consider at the land use bylaw change, because the zoning will, basically the zoning will set the stage for what kind of developments it can be put on the parcel, on the land. For example, the integrated neighborhood today, it is not in this area because a high density parcel will be to the north of the southwest neighborhood. It will be sometime in the future, but today, later on, in the rezoning bylaw, there is the applicant is proposing to rezone into commercial and the integrated neighborhood. So
That's what I needed to hear. Just want to know when that's coming back.
Yeah.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Wong.
Councilor Hendricks?
Your worship, thank you. My question is around the 50th Street piece going north, and the 50th Street functional study that was done with this moment in mind. Done many years ago, knowing that this moment was coming. And I'm just wondering if the principles that were under the 50th Street functional study are being met here with these documents.
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the 50th Street functional study was a document that would have been reviewed as a piece of this development process. As noted within the question itself, that is a document that is from several years ago, and it is my understanding, and it would be therefore administration's understanding, that that document has provided the vision and principles for that corridor to this point, and that now the function of that corridor will change into the future as outlined within the municipal development plan and the transportation master plan. So that corridor study has provided the kind of planning guidance, advice, principles up until this point, and as development occurs, the planning process will capture the technical studies required and the subsequent implementation decisions required to address change that would occur to 50th Street as development occurs alongside it.
I think I know what I just heard. So I want to thank all those who participated in the 50th Street functional study and all the public open houses. But they also have to understand that things are about to change. And part of what happened during that process was a couple of key principles. One was to maintain something of a roadway that had some speed to it. At one point, we were at 100 kilometers. Now we're down to 80. There was a decision made by admin to take that speed limit down to 80. Are we going to 60? And then are we slowing it down to 50? You know what I mean? One of the bare bone principles was to ensure that we had some sort of piece of road that wasn't encumbered by streetlights and all sorts of other devices that would slow your ability to get in and out of Beaumont. We know that already on the Edmonton side of this discussion, things have changed. And Walker Lakes and all the rest, where the lights are now, is, in my opinion, different than the meetings that I attended. There's going to be a service road attached to this piece so that we were not having a direct access to 50th. And I'm assuming that this piece, this neighborhood plan, this document will support some kind of a service road, so that we're not taking away, in terms of access points, off 50th Street. So I just want to ensure that those principles that were hard fought principles, well attended open houses for the future of Beaumont, that hasn't just been changed as a result of the first plan up that shows up, that this is the moment that plan was meant for. The other thing I wanted to just discuss was the bypass as part of 50th Street functional study. Bypass east, bypass west. The east was going to take us down to 240 off 510. I'm assuming that that's still in play, that we'll have that opportunity. That'll give you mainly your access going north if you're coming off 510, and then going south, you're supposed to also have a bypass that took you to 510, 243, and then south, along with the, I think it was a 4-lane corridor with 66th Street, which was all part of that conversation. And I'm assuming all of that is still happening.
So through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, those more regional corridors would be part of the technical analysis that feeds into this plan, but would likely have further direction embedded into it, into the choices for those corridors specifically, based on the intermunicipal or the integrated regional transportation master plan. I'm not going to say acronyms. That is the full title of the document. And that is a document that's being created, or it is being developed over the past year and moving into the next few months is being developed and finalized. And so that document is going to take into account current infrastructure direction and decisions that are on the table in the region, and in some ways either reinforce or provide guidance that reshapes that direction for each of those corridors based on the higher level priorities of regional transportation between Edmonton, Beaumont, Leduc County, and other regional players. So within this application specifically, there isn't a certain direction applied for, reinforced, or negated. And there's kind of this higher level policy that is going to provide further direction for those specific corridors.
Right. So when you see how the Henday has been developed, here to those who could see the future. And then when you see the LRT being developed, you can see the opposite, right? In terms of having to acquire lands and acquire right-of-ways and all the rest. So I just want to make sure that for those of us who were fought hard for those principles, that that the basic principles of those documents are still being followed by somebody within our administration to champion that cause, so that we in fact do get the 2 bypasses, that 50th Street doesn't turn into a 50 km/h zone. We want to have the access point so that we have some rhythm in terms of leaving the community at a good speed, so that people, feel that they can move in the community, right? So that's part of it. And of course, the other thing too is that, in the past, the principles of ring roads were in place. We're still waiting for the second ring road to wrap up. You talk about area structure plans. We've got our Colonial Estates is year 40 now, I believe. We're into phase 6 or 7. We got a ways to go yet. So, and if I could take you to Keswick and area structure plans, I believe they've had in the multitudes of 20 or 30 from where they started to where they actually landed. So got a long ways to go, but the basic principles were in place, which includes on Keswick, Ellerslie Road. Those principles have been fought hard to be maintained. And that's what I'm hoping to hear, that we maintain those, not to hear that we're at a point where there's going to be change and we're just going to change it. No. Henday's there for a reason. Good on them. They fought hard. They hung on to it. Could you imagine Edmonton without Henday today? So thanks.
Councilor Danyluk.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, gentlemen. I have 2 questions. The first question is simply on the neighborhood structure plan. If I'm listening to the previous comments from my council colleagues, Councilor Stout and Councilor Van Newkirk, is there going to be a trail system within the Larive neighborhood development plan? I'm not seeing, if I missed it, I apologize. I'm not seeing any kind of a schedule that shows a walking, bike riding type trail system within this neighborhood. Is that part of the decision on the trail?
So through your worship to Councillor Danyluk, the intent of the active transportation network map is to show those higher level trails that would provide the like neighborhood wide or kind of area wide connections for walking, rolling, biking. And so that's presented on page 58 of the area structure plan, and would, if council moves forward with second and third reading, would form that basis, that skeleton for strong active transportation connections throughout the neighborhood. But of course, there's the finer details that do get sorted out further along in the development process with regard to sidewalks or the exact placement of these trails. And so in principle today, what council could approve is a high level skeleton overview of what active transportation connections would look like within the Larev area overall. And that would inform future development decisions of exactly where this stuff will be placed and how it will connect with each other.
Thank you, Mr. Rates. Just to clarify for people listening at home and council in general, there will be a trail system within the neighborhood. It's not identified in these documents, but there will be a trail system. As people in Beaumont love the trail system we already have, and having a trail system in the neighborhood would be very important, I think. So there will be a trail system identified at a later time.
So through your worship to Councillor Daniluk, yes, the term active transportation network reflects the higher level plans that we have in place with our connectivity, but that the trails are included or are really the bones of like what an active transportation network is. So it is included.
Okay, thank you very much. My second question is, if I may, if you could join me please on 6B attachment 2. I'm not sure what page number it is. I apologize. I'm looking at it's attachment 2 land use concept. It does say figure 6 land use concept. And I'm piggybacking on Councillor Hendrick's comments moments ago about the access to 50th Street. The map I'm looking at, gentlemen, and if you'll join me, and ladies, if you'll join me there, is as you're going north on 50th, north of 510, you see that the red areas are commercial. The first white line and the second and third are the roads coming in a west direction to 50th Street. And so I was kind of curious what the situation or what the plan is for access from the neighborhood onto 50th Street. Now, Councilor Hendricks mentioned a moment ago a potential service road as being part of that 50th Street study he mentioned moments ago that was done in years gone by. If that is the case, I'm not seeing a service road on this diagram. It could be there perhaps in practice, but I'm not seeing it there. So I'm looking at this. This tells me there'll be direct access from these 3 roads in this particular diagram from the neighborhood right onto 50th Street, which tells me either there's going to be a stop sign there or a set of lights, which to Councilor Hendrick's point will make 50th Street going north from 510 a series of lights as you go north along the western edge of the Larive neighborhood plan. So if you could clarify for me what's the plan for the access from those roads in this diagram onto 50th Street? Will they be stop signs? Will there be street lights in those successive locations? Or what's the anticipated plan? Which I'm not sure if I missed that from the document, I'll apologize now, but I'm not sure I'm seeing how the access will be done as part of the neighborhood structure plan itself. Please.
So through your worship to Councillor Daniluk, you're correct in that the exact design of those intersections or what kind of controls that may get put in place would look like is not described in the area structure plan, in the neighborhood structure plan, or within the redistricting. It's at this point in the planning process, we're just noting that there would be access points. However, I think from the outline of the land use concept and how commercial areas are distributed along 50th Street, the intent is not to further punctuate 50th Street at areas outside of those access points. Those access points have been identified and would be subject to potential controls as the development process sequences out and shifts this area from agricultural rural to urban. And so the design of intersections at those points is not determined at this point, but the area structure plan and the neighborhood structure plan outline that there will be accesses of some sort in those locations, and that those would be placed as the development shifts rural areas to urban areas.
Okay, that's what I expect as an answer. I do appreciate that. I may have a follow-up later, Mayor Stewart. Thank you very much. I'll yield the floor, please. Thank you.
Councillor Stowe.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Actually, Councillor Daniluk sort of asked the question I was going to ask, but I'll follow up anyway. Just quickly, so if I understood all that correctly, the neighborhood structure plan specifies on page 128 of my package, page 34 of the NSP, that there are, what do you call them, potential active modes crossing where at 2 or possibly 3 points where the active trail system crosses 50 Street and will have to cross 50 Street in order to reach the trail on the west side of 50 Street, as well as, and Councillors Hendricks and Danlock have also referred to the need to provide some kind of traffic control at the road network intersections there with 50 Street, of which I think there are 3 also. So I understand what you just described, the nature of those, of the design of those intersections is not yet finalized at this point. So my question becomes, at what point where in this process do we finalize, do we get some input into what those actually are? Where do we decide, or does administration decide what those actually are going to be? Because that's arguably 50 Street itself is not part of this area structure plan, or is it?
So through your worship to Councillor Stout, I'll answer the latter part of that question. I may defer the first part to Mr. Wong, but the 50th Street is not directly included within the described areas of the area structure plan or the neighborhood structure plan. But when administration undertakes planning processes like this, there's an understanding that there's impacts beyond the areas specifically described. And so there is some direction with how the development would impact 50th Street and how 50th Street or other major thoroughfares impacts how development looks like in those areas. But I will defer to Mr. Wong regarding next parts of this process and certain decisions around intersections.
From the mayor to Councillor Stout, I think that to answer your questions and probably some other councillors regarding to 50th Street losing. Okay. With regarding to 50th Street's the ultimate the plan for that, I believe, if I may answer it that way, as the applicant prepare for this area structure plan, one of the submission would be a transportation impact assessment (TIA), and as Stephen Rates he pointed out, even though 50th Street is not definitively as part of the ASP area, but definitely the development in the La Rev area would impact 50th Street because the in and out of the neighborhood would be from 50th Street, right? And later on would be, when we move further to the east, it would be from Ring Road 240. So according to the TIA, the traffic impact assessment, 50th Street will be ultimately signalized on those intersections. So, but the primary function of 50th Street is still a regional arterial. That is probably the focus of the discussion. Yes, there will be the technicalities, how to keep the traffic flow, how to keep the safety for travelers and for other people that are using the road. That would have to consider when we design and put the signalizing. And to answer your question, Councillor Stout, is on when that would come, the city would normally monitor the traffic flow, and there would be a trigger point that the city would consider, okay, now it is the time to put in, for example, traffic lights to control the traffic in that intersection. So it won't be immediately, it would be sometime in the future, and there would be trigger point. And I believe that the TIA also pointed out to those trigger points. So we have to keep monitoring how as development occurs, as the traffic volume increase, then that would be a trigger point that the city would have to go in and do some improvement on the intersection. It is not just part of the traffic light. Maybe there is a need to do the right turn lane and probably a left turn lane. So just to minimize the traffic flow of the through traffic along 50th Street, as to Councillor Hendrick's point, because 50th Street is the arterial. We have to maintain that traffic flow. But at the end of the day, yes, development would change the use of the road, but the purpose of the road is still an arterial. So, and that is how I will answer that question.
Thank you. Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, it's dependent ultimately on traffic volumes.
Yep.
And at some point a threshold of traffic volume is exceeded, at which point we decide that we need to redesign something. Okay, and I'll ask more in hope than expectation that we might also consider the possibility of roundabouts rather than traffic signals. Is that
You're a little early for
something that
that
we
one,
consider?
but
Yeah,
but
I'll get it in there. I think for a number of reasons which I can go into at length, but yes, it's probably premature, but I'd like it to be on the record at least. Thank you. Okay.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. And I guess it's a question of process to Mr. Rates. If council wanted to ensure that there was a service road beside 50th Street, is this the time? Or is it not until everything's built out? Like I just feel I'm hearing from many of my colleagues, and I am concerned as well. If we're building commercial along 50th Street, there's going to be in and out traffic. There's going to be eventually traffic lights, which is counter to what Councillor Hendricks believes, and many others do as well, should be happening along there. So is this the time to say no to this plan and go back to the drawing board and put in a service road?
Through the mayor to Councillor Barnhart, and yes, council has the ability to do that, but I believe my answer to your question would be putting a surface road alongside 50th Street may not solve the discussion, the problem, the issue at hand, because the surface road is running alongside 50th Street. At the end of the day, there is still that intersection. The surface road coming out to the collector road, east-west collector road, and then truck coming out onto 50th Street, you still have that intersection. But then having a surface road besides the 50th Street would, personally, or as a planner, it would create probably some safety hazards, because you created an intersection, a secondary intersection just right beside 50th Street, a major one. So I would believe that would be creating a safety hazard for people that are trying to come out from the surface road onto 50th Street, while people are coming in and out of the collector road onto 50th Street. So yes, council has is in the prerogative to make that amendment, but from the practical perspective, I don't think that will be a good solution.
Mr. Wong, would you not agree that some of it has been happening in other municipalities, though? When I think of some in our region, like Sherwood Park, for example, there are roads beside that major highway in the commercial area. Going through Gasoline Alley in Red Deer for many years, there's roads beside there. I mean, it seems like a compromise between having the speed limit reduced to accommodate for the high density that's going to be at the top of that eventually. And it's hard to envision this because it's so far in the future. But to Councillor Hendrick's point, if we don't, we're going to be stuck with something down the road that can't be fixed or cost a lot more money to fix. So I'll leave it to that. I'll hear what others have to say, but it seems to me that I'm hearing it from many of my colleagues that that's a concern.
Mr. Mack, I see your hands up. followed by Councillor Hendricks.
I guess I'd just like to provide a little bit of context in terms of some of the discussions here. Appreciate things like Gasoline Alley are good examples, but appreciate Gasoline Alley is punctuated by a number of interchanges. And Mr. Wong is correct that if you have a service road that parallels a major arterial road, you end up with 3 intersections in a row that are in a very tight space. And from a geometric standpoint, it makes it very, very awkward and very, very dangerous. An arterial road provides limited access to the road. So what by understanding of the intention on 50th Street, both through this area as well as north in the city of Edmonton, is that it'll be built to the road will be built to a very high standard. That means there will be a limited number of intersections along the corridor. They will be spaced far enough apart that it provides a consistent flow of traffic through the synchronization of lights. But the other thing that happens is you also introduce channelization, and that means any of the vehicles that are making turning movements that are going into the commercial area or trying to make left turns are doing so from separate lanes. So you have lanes for deceleration as well as to separate the movements from those vehicles. So the intention of an arterial road is certainly to move traffic, and but provides a balance between the movement of traffic as well as access to those land areas. So as you can see in the plan, there's only going to be 3 intersections in that mile-long stretch. If you look at Beaumont just to the south of here, you'll see a much denser number of intersections. There's more intersections or more access points to the commercial area. So by spreading those intersections out, you're able to operate that road at a very high standard in terms of the progression of traffic through those signals, as well by providing acceleration and deceleration lanes and turn bays. You're able to move the traffic that is either accelerating or slowing out of the mainstream of traffic to allow, again, that progression. And so as the area develops, as the area grows, providing those sorts of features to it will allow the arterial road or 50th Street to operate at a very high standard, to carry a very high volume of traffic. I would expect that the area in Edmonton to the north is going to operate the same way. The speed limit in the long run, I do not expect, regardless of what you do to it in terms of service roads, will be able to remain at 80 kilometers an hour. 80 kilometers an hour, typically you would see grade separated interchanges, but there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to maintain a 60 kilometer an hour speed limit through this area and provide very good traffic progression.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. Councillor Hendricks, and then we'll see about round 2 here.
Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Mackey. With respect to the service road theory, it came to us through Alberta Transportation, through the 50th Street Functional Study Committee, which also was endorsed by the City of Edmonton, Leduc County, Beaumont. So that was always a principle that was in place. With respect to the style and type, we see it in other communities, Devon, we see it in Hinton. I understand what it does to your net land use with respect to having to put in a roadway that otherwise would just have an access point off 50th Street. But I'm always amazed at all the time and effort that goes into these studies. And I've been involved in too many that have just been, it goes to public hearings, has discussions, we're going to follow it, and then we don't follow it. And that for me is troublesome. We put a lot of time and effort into it. We're finally here at the moment that counts. And right away, the principles of that study are being diminished. And I just don't agree. So thank you.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to add my 2 bits on service here too, because it seems that's where the discussion is focused. I can't speak to, how, the plan and the study. I don't have the history that Councillor Hendricks does, so I appreciate hearing that. But what I can offer is that Gates Ave and Red Deer on the northern portion of Red Deer, I know that those service roads over the years, I've had more close calls on those service roads than I have on many other places. But when you look to other service roads like Hinton or Devon, I don't see the same issues when I drive on those. So I don't know how those things are designed differently in Red Deer. I know they're very tight. The service roads, you just turn off one directly onto another, and there's not much physical distance in between them, and it makes it difficult to navigate those. Versus in Hinton, where I don't know, it feels like you have more room and more road and more spacing. And in Devon, it just seems, you turn off and it's a natural progression to get onto the service road and off the busy highway that's going to go down the hill. So I don't know how we come to an answer on this one. There's been a lot of work to get to this point. But we are hung up on a piece here that is an important piece of the conversation. So, just look to the mayor and administration for some ideas on where we're at, because I'm a little stuck myself. So thank you.
Comments from administration? I don't know how to unstick you.
So through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, there are like higher level, larger picture things that will evolve with this corridor into the future, and this is in a large part of the process of annexation. The city of Beaumont has brought on these lands with, a municipal development plan in place that identifies these lands for future urban development after further study. And so, the 50th Street corridor, due to these high level planning processes playing out and getting us to this point where we can be at a point of potentially approving and moving forward with high level statutory plans, means that the corridor will, in some respects, change over time. I think Mr. Mackey has done a good job of explaining what those changes may look like, but I think there have been larger pieces in play that have gotten the city of Beaumont to this point. So I think administration hears out the concerns with 50th Street, and I think, as identified before, Mr. Mackey has done a good job of explaining what change management along the corridor could look like. But the city of Beaumont has made decisions to get us to this point where there will be changes that would occur along this corridor into the future. But I think those changes can be made in a way that has regard for and respect for the concerns of moving folks regionally, moving folks from one neighborhood to the other as development occurs. And so I don't have any specific answers, but would just want to speak to that larger history in play, that these are lands that have been identified for within the city's plans, within the region's plans for eventual urban development, and accompanying that will be some form of changes to the corridor.
Okay, recognizing that we have been sitting for an hour and a half, I'm going to try and move this along a little. See Mr. Mackey drop his hand. Councillor Munkoff Swain, and then I want to move on to the third one, and then we'll take a quick break.
I'm happy to take a break now, Your Worship. I think it might be worth regrouping just and coming back and reminding folks where we are in the process of all this. Some really long discussion here, but where are we exactly where we are, and what are the implications? I'm hearing a lot of concern from council that about increase in traffic lights on 50th Street and how do we get around that. So I think take a break. Let's get a good understanding of where we actually are in the process in terms of the presentation in front of us, and then we need to figure out a path forward, because what I'm hearing is based on what's presented, there might not be the votes for this based on the concern around traffic lights and the impact of 50th Street. So I think we just need to regroup and get an opportunity to see what that next step could look like before we get too far down that road.
Fair enough. All right, let's take a quick 10, and then we will come back and pick the public hearing. Okay, Okay, as reconvene the meeting, bring the public hearing back to order. From a process perspective, I apologize. We sort of dug down a little bit. This is a public hearing. We're supposed to be asking questions on the merits. We started to debate about a little bit of the merits of service roads, not service roads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull us back up. We're going to talk about, we'll finish off the questions on the technical merits. We'll close off the public hearing, and then we'll move into the debate function on the ASB, and that's when we can really delve down into some of these issues about what council wants to see out there. Because on hindsight, as we go forward, I'm thinking there's some fundamental differences, but I'm not sure. We'll find out. Before I move us along from the NSB, I will let Mr. Mackey have one quick comment to pick us back up, and then we're going to go on to the redistricting, and then we'll move into second and third reading of these bylaws.
May I share my screen?
Sure.
So I just wanted to sort of be able to explain it with some. So in terms of a service road, what you create in a service road is you create a number of traffic movements in a very tight space. So a service road can work when you have a lot of land, when you've got a lot of spacing, but as soon as your service roads are too close, so the blue lines represent the arterial road, the red lines represent the service roads and the side streets. So you can see I've only added 3 movements here, but what happens is you're introducing a large number of conflict points. So from an operational perspective, what you're doing is you're putting a lot of movements in a very small space, and that creates, as suggested by one of the councillors earlier, it creates risky movements, it creates a lot of conflicts, it creates a number of safety issues. And so in order for a service road to be functional, you need to, at these endpoints, you need to separate it either by use of an interchange, or you need a lot of land to spread those service roads out. And typically you wouldn't find that in an urban setting. If you look at, for example, the intersection spacing in Hinton, you've got a 2,000 meter intersection spacing between intersections. As well, the right of way that you've got there is several hundred meters wide. In Red Deer, the spacing along Gasoline Alley between those intersections is almost 2,800 meters. In Beaumont, adjacent to Larev, we're talking about a 1,600 meter distance. So what happens when you move those intersections, those service road intersections closer together, you end up with movements of vehicles going back and forth between lanes, getting on from one service road or off on the next one. It's called a weave. So you imagine these vehicles weaving in and out of each other to try to get onto the road from a service road or off of the road from a service road. So at 1,600 meters, you don't have enough space between your intersections to provide an adequate distance for those movements to take place. And so you end up again with a lot of conflict points within a very short space. Where Beaumont currently ends, where the urban area of Beaumont currently ends, and the commercial area to the south, to the Edmonton city limits is only going to be about 1,600 meters. And the Edmonton section of this road is going to be an arterial road. And the arterial road standards for the city of Edmonton, they typically, you would see about 300 meter spacing between intersections along an arterial road. And so what's being proposed for the REV is a similar intersection spacing along there. And what it does is provides an adequate number of intersections for access to those commercial and residential areas. So you're not loading up one intersection or 2 intersections with all that traffic. You're spreading it out. And by having those intersections at that 300 plus or minus meter spacing, what it allows is a progression of that traffic through those various lights. If you put all of that traffic onto a single intersection or onto 2 intersections, those side streets need more green time. They need more time when 50th Street would be red and the side streets would be green to get all that traffic out onto 50th Street. So by actually putting in more intersections and spacing them appropriately, you can get a much more efficient operation on 50th Street. So while service roads may provide a solution in some situations, given this is a very tight urban context, and in the long run, it's going to be a very urban area and not a lot of land, and you don't have really long intersection spacing, it's likely not the best solution in terms of achieving flows. I think the perception is that a service road solves problems, but what a service road does is concentrates a lot of activity in a very small space, creates conflicts, and it leads to operational challenges that aren't easily resolved. If anyone has any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Okay, I see, oh, Councillor Hendricks.
Well, to Mr. Mackey. Okay, walk me through this then. What's your vision? Are you talking a vision that's similar to as you travel into Beaumont off 510 going south? As you come into Beaumont, that's the look that we're going to get going north?
No, you have more intersections south of 510 than what is being proposed here. You've got the number of access points to that commercial area, for example, to the east or to the west. There are more access points. That's what's being proposed here. Really, what we're talking about in terms of access to Larev is 3 intersections for that entire mile or 1,600 meters of distance.
Okay, so you're talking intersections that allow you to cross the entire breadth of 50th Street.
That's correct. And what they do is, because it's all coming off of that main road, and rather than adding a service road, if I can suggest, you may be better off adding what I would call an auxiliary lane. So for example, for those access points into Larev, rather than having a service road where you're having a lot of weaving movements, what you do is you add an auxiliary lane for that right turn movement, or you add a left turn bay for that left turn movement coming in. And what that does is it takes those decelerating vehicles out of the flow of traffic. It puts them in their own separate lane. So you're not slowing down that traffic. So you can maintain that 60 km/h speed limit.
Right. And then you're going to have the same situation on the other side.
Yes, but you're not adding additional intersections because of it. You'd have those same intersections. So overall, those intersections would function. And appreciate that what's happening is that a lot of those movements will be right turns while the left turns the traffic is going through. And so the Main Street traffic is stopped while those right turns are coming on. So they're not holding up traffic. They're not delaying traffic. And that 300-meter separation distance between signals gives you good progression. So what happens is those lights turn green as you're approaching them. And as that traffic discharges, the traffic from the upstream traffic signal are arriving, and they're able to get through those lights as well. It's when you get signals too close together that you get that queuing problem and what's called a shock wave. And so what happens is, if the lights are too close together, you have vehicles arriving before the vehicles in front of them have left. What you need to do is make sure you've got really good spacing between them. And that way you can optimize that capacity east-west. You have all of that east-west traffic moving at the same time at all the intersections. And then as the traffic on 50th Street moves through those lights, you have them turning green, and so you get good progression. And that's what gives you your efficiency between your various traffic signals.
Right. So Beaumont used to enjoy a 60 km/h zone from 510 going south. It's now 50. We used to enjoy 100 going north. That's 80. You're suggesting it's going to go to 60. It'll probably end up at 50 as a result. So the whole intent of the 50th Street functional study was to maintain some speed and some ability to be unencumbered going north or south. But I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Mackey. Understand that.
Yeah, and in order to achieve or maintain.
Let me be clear that I put a lot of time into the 50th Street functional study. And those of us who have to sit through meeting after meeting after meeting to identify and try to establish something for Beaumont that would stick, like including what used to be the North Area Structure Plan. None of it sticks, none of it matters, and in one meeting, in minutes with your sketches, it's all gone. It's out the window, and we're down to 50 km/h going north and south. That I object to, because I think we as humans put too much time and effort into these things, and just to have it tossed in its first reincarnation by way of an area structure plan. So I take exception to that.
Okay, appreciate your comments, Councillor. It leads to some more fundamental issues that, need to get discussed as we're going forward. Councillors Monkhouse, Swain, and Stout, your hands are up. You got specific questions about the neighborhood structure plan? Because
I was just going to suggest what you said earlier, is get us out of the public hearing and then get into the debate on the.
I'd rather, that's where I want to head. I want to head to debate, because that seems to be where council wants to go. But we got to finish this public hearing. Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to comment that if I had proper spacing of the intersections and turn lanes for all the intersections, then to my mind, I don't know whether you'd agree, Mr. Mackey, then it would also be an ideal roundabout solution instead of traffic lights, depending on
from planning.
the traffic flows. I understand.
We're going to get away from planning intersections.
We've gone down a detailed discussion of service roads. I just wanted to get my 2 cents in.
Thank you very much for bringing it up again. Noted. We're going to get away from this.
I was wondering if Mr. Mackey had a comment.
You can talk to him later. Moving on. Redistricting. Does anybody have any questions about bylaw 996? Sorry, bylaw 1001-21 land use bylaw amendments redistricting. Okay, seeing none. One last chance before we thank the consultants for their opportunity to be here, because once we move to debate, we're going to say goodbye and go on. So last chance for questions of the consultants. All right, thank you very much. It's been a bit of a long go with some emotional debate, with some emotional things. So I appreciate all the input from both our administration and our council. Administration and our consultants that are presenting, or the applicant that is presenting tonight. Not our consultants, they're the applicants' consultants. At this point, we will declare the public hearing closed. And we will move to bylaw 994-21, Larive area structure plan, second and third reading. So once again, as the consultants depart, thank you very much for presenting this evening. We really do appreciate it.
So I'll provide just really brief remarks on behalf of administration here, but it is administration's view that bylaw 994-21, that this area structure plan is consistent with the city's overall policy direction. And so it's the administration's recommendation that council move forward with giving second and third reading to bylaw 994-21, or in not that event, that council not provide second and third reading and direct administration on how they wish to proceed.
Thank you very much. We've had extensive conversations surrounding this. Is a member of council willing to move second reading? Councillor Mungo Swain.
I'll move second reading.
Thank you. Do you wish first opportunity for comment?
Sure. Thank you. I think we unfortunately got caught up in this particular AFP. We got caught up in a broader conversation around 50th Street. And what I'm hearing a lot of concerns from council around what the makeup of 50th Street, what it looks like. I'm going to speak from a broader, the biggest picture I can play here from a Beaumont perspective, which is our municipal development plan, our MDP. This council went through and reviewed that, and that's our largest statutory document. We went through, and I'm going to share my screen just so that we're all can see. Here's our MDP. We went through it. We spent a lot of time on it. You can see 50th Street here. There is, again, obviously this is future growth area, but we had identified commercial here and potentially residential on either side of 50th Street there. I just want to bring us back to that. If council is now saying that, I don't, when I went through that and reviewed the MDP and looked at having commercial on either side, as well as potential future growth areas for residential and anything else that's coming with that. When I went through that, I was under the impression that there would have to be some sort of traffic measures, i.e. traffic lights along the way. I absolutely agree that we want to limit as many traffic lights as possible. But when I approved that MDP, personally, I'll speak to it. When I approved that MDP, I was under the impression that we would have to have some sort of traffic control measures there. So if council is now saying that that's not what we want, or we want to have a different discussion, then my recommendation would be to push this ASP bylaw, which would ultimately kick everything else down the road, and us have a broader discussion. I'm personally okay with the plan that's presented. and I'm understanding from the consultant and what's been put in place that they've minimized the number of intersections, but the only way to develop that land, and the reason why we annexed it, was to develop that land both from a commercial and a residential perspective. The only way that it's ever going to go is if there is a traffic opportunity or traffic signaling measures for folks to get out of, now we're calling it La Rev, to turn left to get down to Beaumont, or vice versa, to coming from Edmonton, turning left into the development. So I was always under the impression that there would be these traffic calming measures or traffic lights, I should say. But if council wants to have a bigger discussion, I don't think we should vote down this particular ASP because of that. I think we need to come back and have a bigger discussion. I'm prepared to vote for this right now, but if there aren't the votes, I would recommend that instead of voting against this, that we just push this and bring back a bigger picture discussion for the MDP, what that means. So I'll leave it there, Your Worship, and see if I'll just have thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm sort of moving along in your vein in terms of my thinking on this particular project. This ASP is very consistent with our MDP. It is very consistent with the growth and what we wanted to have happen in that quarter. So to my mind, if we vote down the ASP, it's going to, we're going to have a broader conversation about whether or not we go back up and open up the MDP, which is literally going to undo 4 years of work.
Sure, and I'm not recommending going down that road. I'm just saying if we don't want traffic lights on 50th Street, then we need to relook at our MDP and not have the conversation about this ASP, because that's a smaller function of that. So that's all I'm saying, is that if we don't want traffic lights on 50th Street and we don't want it to drop down to 60 or 50 in that space right now, then that goes against our MDP, and it's not the right signal to the development community who we're saying, here's our statutory plan, fit within that. But if we're going to cancel that or not approve that, I should say, then I think we just need to have that conversation in council about what we want for that area.
Yeah, and thank you very much. I do agree with that. And in terms of service roads or not service roads, I let traffic engineers figure that out as the best way to move traffic. I too am supportive of moving this along tonight, and I'm prepared to vote in favor of it. Are there any other members of council wishing to speak on second reading? Councillor Danyluk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was interested in exploring some of the comments from Councillor Hendrick earlier about the 50th Street traffic study that was done years ago and the intent of it. But having said that, looking back at our MDP and also the explanation from our consultant this evening about the service road implications, I wanted to have that conversation as part of that was a topic that was brought up earlier. And I'm of the position I've accepted the explanation of the consultants regarding the service road versus having intersections with traffic lights, which I'm assuming we'll be doing going forward. As Councilor McAuspay mentioned, the MDP does talk about having locations there for commercial development, and I don't know how we're going to have that without having intersection of some kind or form. So I'm comfortable going forward with the area structure plan the way it's been presented this evening, and let the administration and traffic consultants properly ascertain how to implement proper traffic flow along 50th Street going north and maintain the highest possible speed to move traffic along safely and also access the new development we're trying to do with our MDP. So I'm comfortable going forward based on the discussion we have, but I do appreciate the history of the 50th Street report. I'm not too sure the exact intent of having 50th Street to be as fast and straightforward as possible, but while having commercial development on both sides, you've got to have some give and take. And I'm comfortable with the discussion we've had this evening. I do appreciate the debate on it, but I'll be looking forward to supporting the area structure plan as presented, pardon me. Thank you.
Councillor Danyluk. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Thank you, Mayor. And I appreciate the discussion. I am quite torn on this one. And I want the development to go ahead. Don't misunderstand me. But I am also concerned about how many traffic lights and the really changing nature of that piece of roadway. I do agree. And Councillor Monkoff-Swain, you made a very cogent argument about the MDP. We did approve it. And ultimately, I do think that is what's going to happen. But I also feel that I'm being rushed. I don't know that I've ever seen all three of these, area, neighborhood, and redistricting, coming at the same time in this format. And maybe for that reason, I'm feeling very reluctant to say yes, 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 without having an opportunity to look at options. And I guess that's the question I would ask if the administration wants to weigh in. Why does all of this have to be approved today? Could we not look at this and look at the options for that, for the impact on the road there? I think that's the issue that is concerning me at this moment.
Well, through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, the process that we're working through today is a process that administration was comfortable with bringing forward, was a process that was requested by the applicant, and administration found a lead up to that process that could make this a approval process that would fall in line with all requirements of the Municipal Government Act. So that is why it is being presented in this manner today. It is not skirting any rules or not falling out of line with what best practice or what our approach we would want to see with the land development process within Beaumont. And so that's why we see them come all together today. And that presentation within the public hearing about how we made sure that there was alignment within all of these plans, although they were coming at similar times, that did provide us with a really great opportunity to look at one, update it, and then allow those updates to very clearly and directly translate into the subsequent plans and ensure if any subsequent edits needed to occur, that they could be made between all levels of the planning framework. So that would be the response for that question.
Follow-up, Councillor, are you good?
Well, I'm not convinced, Mayor, to be quite honest. And as I heard Councillor Monkoff-Swain, he suggests that perhaps this could go back and come back at a later date with our administration telling us how that fits with previous studies and other decisions that we've made. But I don't know. At this point, I'm not leaning towards voting yes. I'm leaning towards voting no.
Councillor Hendricks?
Thank you. I just want to make sure that it's fully understood that the MDP and the 50th Street Functional Study do coexist and there's no issues. What we're asking to do now is modify the 50th Street Functional Study. That I'm objecting to. The MDP is fine. And we've all gotten a copy of the 50th Street Functional Study. You've all had a chance to read it. You know clearly that we've got two documents that are clashing here, and now we have multiple consultants that are clashing, be it the province, be it Mr. Mackey. I'm suggesting that we went through a very extensive public hearing process. We had, this public hearing, open house in the arena, lots of turnout, lots of opinions, lots of comment, and okay, now we've got that document in place. Now we bring in the MDP. No difference. But now today, we're gonna wipe that clean. 50th Street Functional Study is gone, and now we're gonna have multiple access points. We're not gonna have a service road. We're gonna have all sorts of other things. And in my opinion, we got to tell the public that what used to be 80 kilometers is about to turn into 50 kilometers over time. And they got to know that. And I don't think that'll be well received. So that's my point. No problem with the MDP.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Monkoff-Swain, you got a closing? I see no other hands up. Do you have a closing statement to make before we call the question? Because I see no other motions on the floor to defer.
Yeah, maybe a process question. Like I don't want council to vote this down now because so there is a motion on the floor, and I don't want council to vote this down now because they're not necessarily opposed to it, but because we don't have enough information here. So If, like, I'm hoping there are 4 votes to move this forward, but if there's not 4 votes, I just, maybe if someone could explain the implication of voting down this bylaw at this stage versus me removing my motion, and then whoever's looking for more information to direct administration, put a motion on the floor to direct administration to bring whatever we're looking for back. So could someone just provide that process for us, please?
Well, through your worship to Councillor Munkoff Swain, if council was to vote down both second or third reading on the area structure plan, then the city would not be able to accept a reapplication, or would not be able to bring this back to council for another 6 months. So that is the process if the bylaw is voted down.
Yep, that was the answer I was looking for. Thank you, Mr. Rates. Your worship, maybe worth going around, because that is a significant implication. And so I don't want to push forward with it if there isn't the support. I'd much rather withdraw the motion, but if there, I don't know, I haven't heard from everyone. And so I don't know how you want to get people's thoughts on this. Again, I'm supportive of moving forward with this. But I don't want to put this to a vote. If people are, because I think people are voting, if they vote against it, I think what I'm hearing is that people are voting against it because they don't quite have enough information. They don't quite, we don't know how the implication of those three traffic lights are going to impact the 1,600 meters area. So I don't know how you want to facilitate that conversation, John, but I think that's an important one so that we don't get caught up in a regulatory or statutory shutdown for 6 months.
Okay, I think that's a good call. So I'm gonna might be looking for some help from legislative here. Can I just table this motion and then make a motion and then ask if a member of council is willing to make a motion to defer second and third reading? And then we can figure out a course of action there. Is that acceptable, or do I need Councillor Munkoff Swain to withdraw his motion? City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I request a brief 5-minute recess and I'll get an answer for you? Would that be possible?
Unless the CAO knows the answer.
No, let's, we're going back and forth here. Can we just take a couple minutes here and let us circle the wagons for a second?
Okay. Thank you very much. Reconvene the meeting. I appreciate the quick huddle with admin over process. So from a process perspective, as we all know, we can defeat this bylaw at second and third. So from a process perspective, I'm gonna keep second reading on the table. I'm gonna ask that council passes second. I will then immediately make a motion to defer third, which will then give a council the opportunity to discuss whether or not they're comfortable as a whole proceeding towards deferring, or if we have enough votes to proceed towards third reading tonight. And so I would ask that council work through the process with me, and we'll have the discussion about whether or not we need more information and when it comes back after second reading. So second reading is currently on the table. We're going to leave it on the table. Is there further discussion on second reading before I call the vote? Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate you're trying to move this along, and I do want to move it along as well. But here's my question. Once it's past second reading and we get more information, what is going to change at that point for third reading? We're not sending the developers or the administration back to change anything. We're just asking for information, which I think we received tonight. I think it's pretty clear where the consultants that were on the call and our administration sit right now. I think before second reading, we ought to have that information. I don't think waiting until third makes any sense. So I may just be one vote, but that's how I'm feeling right now. And I'm not trying to kibosh the process. I really don't think this is the only solution.
Okay, from a pure process perspective though, This bill, we can push it back at any time before you pass third reading for changes.
We could
So
push
if
it
you-
back now.
We could, but I'm asking you not to,
Why? What is the reason for that?
just to move the process. There's no difference in sending it back at second and sending it back at third, sending it back now or sending it back between second and third.
And maybe
They're
it's optics. Maybe it's just optics to me. But it seems like once you get past second, there's very little chance anything's going to change.
I would suggest that this would be the exception to the rule, if council wills it that way.
I like to believe that, but I don't.
All right, Councillor Monkhouse Swain.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Barnhart's point. I'm on the other side of this, obviously, but I wouldn't ask, or I wouldn't feel comfortable voting for something if I know that I'm going to vote against it the next time round. So to me, if the will of council is to defer this, then we can bring back second and third reading at any point. Sorry, just to speak to that, but my comment, my overall comment is what Councillor Barnhart was initially saying, is that the consultant and administration have gone through and reviewed all these plans and identified that these are the three areas where we need to have traffic lights, essentially. Deferring this to think about what this means in terms of the 50th Street functional study and anything else, it's not going to change that the consultants clearly said that service roads isn't going to work, right? The administration has reviewed that. So going back, I don't know what an additional what additional information we need in order to be able to make this decision. So I obviously support this motion. I will be supporting the third motion if we get to that one to move this along in line with the NDP. I don't know what deferring it is going to give us, additional information it's going to give us. That's my concern.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely hear Councillor Barnhart and Councillor Monkhouse Swain. And I guess my question is more around what information. So if one of the councillors was going to vote against moving this forward, what information more would come back that would satisfy? I
hear what you're saying, Councillor. I think we moved to debate on the deferral motion. So I'm going to let you pick back up here in a second. I am going to ask Councillor Monkhouse Swain to withdraw second reading from the table. And I'm going to make that deferral motion right now, and you can pick this back up. Councillor Monkhouse Swain, would you please withdraw second reading from the table?
That was very nice of you to ask, but I don't want to. I'd rather us just vote on it. Personally, I see administration is wanting to weigh in here, Mr. Wong, but
hey, it's your motion. If you want to leave it on the table, you can. Mr. Wong.
Yeah, before you probably, Councilman Cosway, before you make a decision whether you want to withdraw your motion, I would like to draw attention, Council, to.
Sorry, Steve.
Can I share my screen? Maybe?
Okay, Mr. Wong. Before we start into new things, I do owe Councillor Van Newkirk.
I'm not sharing new things. I just want to bring up the point that Councilman Cosway was raising with the MDP, and I want to share my screen so that you can see.
Yeah,
what
we're going to come back to you because I owe Councillor Van Newkirk the opportunity to finish.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you. Anyways, the point I was making in the debate portion of the second motions on the table, so we would be into that debate portion now, is that similar to the lines that Councillor Monkhouse Swain said, if you didn't vote for second, or sorry, if you did vote for second and didn't vote for third, what I'm struggling with is the conversation and the thing that we had previously, and the piece that's hanging with me is the statement Councillor Hendricks made around, let's let everyone know that, 50th Street's going down to 60 or 50, right? And I don't think that's really a conversation that anyone wants to have at any point. And, everyone would rather keep the speeds up on that road and limiting the number of access points is the way to do that. So I understand that concept and I grasp all that. But what I'm struggling with now is what new information would come to us that would change our mind without physically making a change. So I see Councillor Hendricks's hand went up. So, that'd be, I'm struggling there. If help me out. Thank you.
Okay, just as a reminder, we are still debating second reading because the motion was now withdrawn. Mr. Wong, followed by Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, I just want to show council, if I may, share my screen there. Probably I'm showing the map 7 of the municipal development plan that is showing the transportation network in the plan, and definitely there are 3 access points that are showing on this map. So, and that is why when we were saying that the area structure plan is aligning with higher level statutory plan, being the first one being the municipal development plan, we are definitely in alignment with the MDP. That is what I'm trying to share. So I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, thank you. One of the principles that this council has run on since the beginning of this term was to acknowledge public participation in all events, in all ways. And certainly 50th Street is there today because of public participation. It got built in a certain way. It was designed in a certain way. It was meant to be delivered in a certain way. And past councils have followed that. Now here we are, and I understand all the arguments that some of my other colleagues are making with respect to, well, it doesn't matter. Today's today. Make 3 stops, make multiple speed zones, knock it down to 50 kilometers. That's not in keeping with the spirit of what was meant to be done on 50th Street. And so I'm just trying to defend those people that were at all these public hearings, and there were as many, to explain that that was the intent. And the 50th Street functional study, which should be respected, it clearly is being shredded here today. And I'm trying to defend it, and all those who attended all the meetings to suggest that, yeah, they were in support of it, which ultimately led to the construction of it. So I have resurrected 50th Street functional study at how many meetings during this term? I have raised it every step of the way that this document has been brought to us. I've raised it. When we were talking 510 and the upgrade, I raised it with Leduc County in the joint meeting. I raised it when I said we should hand it off and let everybody read it again. I've raised it, and I'm raising it again. I'm consistent, very consistent. And I'm also consistent with wanting to be respectful of those who have put in the time and effort in the hopes that, there would be some sort of, tie to the past as we move forward. People can see now how quickly all that work can just evaporate in short order. And I'm just trying to defend all that effort. And I think we should defer. I think we should have another look at it, make sure we're working in the spirit of those documents and in the spirit of what this council has fought hard to provide, which is inclusion of all those who participated. This is not a small bubble here. This is all those who were participating throughout this process. And just because it's years later, it's got nothing to do with it. We set the tone. Henday, amen to Henday. Let's hope that there's some consistency out throughout the region. Right? That's all I'm getting.
Councilor McGough Swain. And I'm going to close the
Yeah,
page.
maybe I'll build on that point from Councillor Hendricks about extensive engagement and public consultation, and talked about the fact that that's what we did with the MDP. We went through a huge amount of engagement as well to build on the work on the 50th Street functional study. I was there, we had all the open houses, we had all the engagement. That figure 7 that Mr. Wong shared was part of that. And so, yeah, like this has been in the public engagement realm that there eventually would be some intersections along 50th Street. I take your point around, whether that gets knocked down to 60 or 50. That I don't recall any of those discussions. I don't see that in any of the plans here. I guess my question back to the 50th Street functional study which you're relying on, is what would that change? But based on that study, and I've read it because you've sent it to me, and I appreciate that. But based on that 50th Street functional study, what would that change to the plan that's in place, right? I guess that's the ultimate question for me, and I appreciate if you could share your thoughts on that, Councillor Hendricks.
Your Worship, if I may, it was a technical study. It had some depth to it. It had some theories on how that traffic flow would work. It would had the conversations about some of the points of egress and access and how it would all function. That's why it was the functional study. So there's more to it than just 2 lines and a roadway and a map that takes you north or south. It was quite in depth. So that's why I say, that the technical piece in Alberta Transportation, the 2 gentlemen from Alberta Transportation found their way up from Barhead for every meeting to make their case. And along with the City of Edmonton Transportation Planners, Leduc County, all of us were all in rooms to discuss this. I'm just saying that we should have some respect for that. We should have a look at it and let's go through it one more time and say, okay, today we're getting a different opinion. Tonight we're getting a different opinion from Mr. Mackey and others. Okay, but that shouldn't mean that just throws out all that effort. That means, okay, that's an opinion. We should get a second opinion. Let's look at it. That's why we're discussing it tonight. That's the point of tonight. We're supposed to have these debates in this setting. That's why we're here. And I'm just saying, okay, while we're here, let's not throw the study out. Let's just have one more look at it and see how it reverberates with what we've heard from Mr. Mackey tonight. So
I appreciate that, Perry. I guess my comment would be that when we built the MDP and we talked about those 3 intersections, that we considered the functional study as part of it. But from what's been presented to me by administration is that administration has looked at the functional street study, they've used that, but in order to develop this land, we need to have 3 intersections. So that's I don't think we're throwing out any of the old work that was done. That's just my point. But I do appreciate your perspective on that and agree that this is the point. This is the whole point of this to debate right now.
Yeah, I know it's a good conversation, and Councillor Margot Swain just made my point. Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Your Worship. We all respect the past work that's been done, Perry. I think that please understand that I do respect the past work that you've been doing on this whole project and the citizen involvement in the process as well. My concern is right now, because the motion has not been withdrawn, I will vote yes for the motion to support it, because I don't want this motion to be defeated and this whole project be pushed back by 6 months. That's what will happen if we don't pass second reading. So I'm going to vote for second reading this evening, and I'm hoping Mayor Stewart will go through if second reading is successful, Mayor Stewart will go through with his motion to defer, and we can take into account Councillor Hendricks' concerns for the past on this report and make sure we have that second look. If the motion was withdrawn, Perry, we could go forward with your suggestion, but the motion has not been withdrawn. So I'm going to support the motion to avoid a 6-month delay, but I will look forward to the deferral motion from Mayor Stewart afterwards if we're successful in second reading, and we'll take into account the report, Perry, and we'll make sure that those concerns are addressed as best we possibly can. Thank you very much.
Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering if administration can explain how the 50th Street functional study has been considered to get to this point. I know that there was some reference to it already, but if you could explain how it has been considered to get us to this point, I'd like to hear that, given the depth of the debate we're into right now. Thank you.
Mr. Warner, Ms. Dargy.
So the city has undertaken a number of plans. You mentioned the MDP. We've also adopted a transportation master plan. Mr. Rates has alluded to the Intermunicipal Regional Transportation Master Plan as well. The 50th Street functional study has been used as a planning. It's no longer the primary planning document. It is used as a historical document for contextual and historical purposes. So it's been considered as these plans have changed. So it's not that it hasn't had any consideration at all, but as we are implementing new plans, that has had some consideration. As development occurs, new changes are going to occur as well. As things occur in the region, different planning documents are going to come out, but there's always been a consideration for that. It may not be exactly as the 50th Street functional study has planned or provided for, but there has been, it has been looked at for contextual purposes.
Councilman Newkirk, does that answer the question?
High level it does. So maybe if you could speak to the functional study relative to traffic speed, and how that will affect the north-south flow of traffic, and if there are any other aspects of the functional study that exist that would further open up the flow of traffic. The only option I see when I'm looking at multiple screens here is, if you went from 3 access points to 2, physically that's what would change something. But is there any aspect of the functional study that could be used or interpreted in order to maximize the traffic flow north-south on 50th Street that hasn't been considered?
I don't have that information from the functional study right with me. I don't have the report in front of me. We do have, as Mr. Rates and Mr. Long had alluded to earlier in the meeting, there are traffic impact assessments that are done as part of the technical documents with these ASP and NSP applications. TIA is also updated at the subdivision process as needed as development is occurring. Those all consider all of these past studies as well and take into account how traffic can flow and should flow and provide the safest build out of the intersections.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to get at is, if and when we consider or reconsider or relook at the functional study to come back at this, I'm trying to determine what changes would actually be made, similar to what Councillor Malkoff-Swain had said. If we get through this process, and that the mayor has suggested with a second to defer a third, what change would we make to honor the 50th Street functional study? I'm trying to wrap my head around that, what that change could be. So I'm still not there. I'm not there with understanding what that change could be. So
I don't know if, through the mayor, I don't know if I may say this one. I was not here when the 50th Street functional study was done, but I may guess that this functional study was done when this land are still with the county. So basically, when the study was done, the proposed land use for this 4/4 section and even to the west would be remain as agricultural use. But I can see the Councillor Hendrick is shaking his head, but that is what I'm thinking. So with the different land use anticipated for the area, for the development, so will the other auxiliary infrastructures that will support the development. So that is what I want to say. I don't have the the background information on how the 50th Street functional plan was done, but that would be my speculation.
So if I can just quickly take a second to clarify that point, the functional study would have been done and the planning direction for that area would have been the North Major area structure plan, which is currently the existing planning direction for this area, as it's been transferred over from when that was Leduc County's area and Leduc County's area structure plan. It is still in effect until a new area structure plan is approved, and in that action, the previous plan is repealed. So that functional study, in speaking to how land use relates along that corridor, is in partnership with the North Major Area Structure Plan, which would be repealed when and if a new area structure plan by the city of Beaumont is passed. So I think the key point to have regard for here is that that functional study was put in place at a time when different jurisdictional boundaries were in place, and when pre-existing land use area structure plans were passed and were the direction for that area. But as we've described with the municipal development plan outlining 3 intersection points, and as I've just explained with the existing and potential going forward land use planning direction for the area, that is kind of the takeoff points with how the functional study would get applied, in that at the municipal development plan, the decision was affirmed that 3 intersection points would be in a conceptual way approved along the corridor, and that the functional study would relate to the North Major Area Structure Plan, which would be repealed through the approval of this area structure plan.
Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Stone. And then that'll close out round 2, and I'm going to call the question on second reading.
Okay. So let me just
vote late.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in terms of 814 50th Street, northbound, used to be a single both ways. Used to be controlled by the province. It was owned by the province, right through Beaumont, right to 625. It used to be plowed, sanded, all the rest. During annexation, the first one, not the second one, the first annexation, Beaumont became the owners of that piece through negotiations with Alberta Transportation, Leduc County. And then with that, 50th Street functional study and the North Area Structure Plan was created so that there would be a buffer between Edmonton and Beaumont, so that we don't just have Edmonton's style and type of housing and then Beaumont style and type of housing backing onto each other through fences. We're supposed to have this estate type, acreage type living as you went south. So with 50th Street, the basic principles was to maintain this corridor. And my point tonight is we were at 100 kilometers an hour when the first annexation started. We're now at potentially 50 kilometers an hour. That's a long ways from the basic principles of the 50th Street functional study. If you can put in 3, 5, 10, or 12 sets of lights and maintain 80 kilometers, then so be it. But I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing we're going to knock it down to 60, maybe even 50. And that is completely off the grid from what we had agreed to at that time. It's a 4-lane piece of roadway that Beaumont put a lot of money into to ensure that it was maintained at a high level, style and type, shoulders included, ditches, you name it, and in alignment with the city. But I'm hearing tonight that that has walked out of here just in minutes, and we're down to a 50 kilometer, 60 kilometer zone all the way to Edmonton. That I don't think will be well received with the voting public. So put in as many obstacles as you like, maintain the speed, 80 kilometers. That's my point.
Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm a little frustrated by the fact that the municipal development plan has been used to determine the fact that we're going to have 3 streetlights in a certain area. Up until tonight, I've always thought of that as the highest level. And we don't usually make those detailed decisions at that higher level. Those are made, as I asked questions earlier about higher density and where trails are, where this is, where that is. Those specifics come at the lower level. But it seems like we keep pushing this down. And we're going to make this decision. We're going to go ahead. We're not going to make the next decision. We're going to push it down later. I want to bring attention to the trails item, which is in the municipal development 6.3.5. And this is to, I think, Councillor Stout's point. It does say that new area structure plans and major updates to area structure plans will be required to identify pedestrian and trail crossing locations on major roads. We have not talked about that. So on the one hand, you've got the municipal development plan being put in front of us and saying, these three little stars here mean we're going to have lights, and you approved that, council. I don't think we did. I think we approved a concept plan. And now it's before us for another level of detail. And you have a couple of councillors, maybe three, maybe two, I don't know, who are pushing back and saying, we're not ready yet for that. Isn't there another way to do what we're trying to do without doing it that way? And it seems like we can't get that information. And if we're going to be put to the point where we have to vote, we will vote, and then a decision will be made. But I for one, think there's always another way. And I don't think you're hearing that is what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Councillor Stout.
Thank you. I'm just looking at our connectivity transportation master plan, which I think we passed we approved last August. I noticed that in Appendix 1, 50 Street is defined as an arterial road. Almost all of it. And then on page 33, there's a little table, roadway network table, that defines, amongst other things, street classification, arterial road, typical number of travel lanes, 2 to 4, traffic volumes less than 30,000 vehicles per day, target speeds, kilometers per hour, 40 to 70. So that document defines that road, as far as I understand it, as having a target speed of 40 to 70 kilometers an hour. I don't know if that helps or hinders the process, but that's what we've already approved.
Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, Councillor. I'm looking at what we approved. I'm looking at what's going on in the city of Edmonton coming north towards us. I'm not sure what's being proposed tonight isn't in line with what's currently going on in the region and taking into account the history. And so I'm prepared to I'm comfortable with where we're landing. Having said that, we're spending a lot of time on this. We are half debating the deferral motion that may or may not come because we're sitting here debating it as part of second reading. I'm going to let Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Munkoff-Swain go, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, and then I am calling the question on second reading.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I do respect the most recent comments by Councillor Hendricks and Councillor Barnhart. I just want to go back to one of my original points, is that the motion has not been withdrawn. And if we go to second reading, it gets defeated. The entire area structure plan gets pushed by 6 months. And one of our cornerstones of this council has been, and we're all very proud of it, and so we should be, economic development. This is a huge development. Delaying by 6 months can be a big difference, maybe a big impact on our local economy. And I want to make sure we don't go down that path for the wrong reason. So I'm supporting the motion because it's on the floor for second reading to make sure we don't delay it by 6 months. If the deferral motion comes after the fact and we do some more revisiting on the traffic stuff, that's great. But I'm concerned that we pass this motion and not delay the entire area structure plan by 6 months, which is not economic development, as we are all committed ourselves to when we became a council almost 4 years ago. Thank you.
And let's be clear, it's 6 months if the applicant decides to bring it back. There's always a risk they may not.
Correct. I'm assuming they would, but good point. But nonetheless, it is still a 6 month delay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying, Mayor Stewart. I appreciate that.
Councillor Munkoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you. So I've heard and I've really tried to understand it and where everyone's coming from on this. And I've tried to take a step back to think, away from just where I'm at, but what does this mean broadly for the council, for our council and our city? This is a big deal. Changing 50th Street is a big deal. And just because I'm not there, I'm hearing that councillors, not all councillors are. And I'd hate for this to be a 4-3 contentious issue when, what I'm hearing is that folks are just looking for an update on that functional study, or maybe I'll stop using that term, but they're just looking for an update on what we could use, what could happen to proceed with development along 50th Street. What are the options in terms of arterial roads coming off that? So as much as I want to move this forward, because I think it's right, I do believe in trying to provide all those opportunities and getting more towards consensus on such a big issue for our city. So what I'm recommending here, again, changing I'll withdraw my motion, and what I want to do is I want to have a motion to direct administration and to bring back information on the options for arterial roads along 814 or 50th Street to facilitate development, and bring that report back to council, do that study, come back to us, and then we can clearly say, and then at that point, council administration will say, they could look at it and based on their best knowledge, they can say, there is no other way to develop this land without putting 2 or 3 intersections, or there is an option. We can do these sort of things. I think I've heard that today, but what I've heard from the rest of some folks anyway, that we're not quite there yet. So based on that, I'm going to withdraw my motion, and I want a clear motion on the table to direct administration, because I think that's what people want to hear. Is what are the possible options for 50th Street to still have development there? What are the possible options? So that's where I'm at. I'm disappointed, but that's where we're at. But I also recognize that this is such an important issue for the city, and want to make sure that we give enough time. I don't think a couple of months will slow down the overall process. So that's where I'm at now, Your Worship, yeah, I think we've spent a lot of time on this. Clearly, council is not comfortable here. We could force a 4-3 vote, but I don't want to do that with something this impactful to the city.
Good.
Okay. Fair enough. So Councillor Monkoff Swain has withdrawn his motion, and I see the CAO's got his hand in the air, and quite frankly, I'm not quite clear either. So the first part of the motion is to defer second and third reading of bylaw 994-21 and do what?
That's the clarification that we're seeking as well. What exactly would you like us to bring back?
Probably best to hear from the others, but I think what I'm hearing is administration to provide council with a review of what options there are to develop 50th Street in terms of arterial roads. And I don't know if that's the right language, and I'll let you guys figure out the correct language, and maybe Kathy or Perry to jump in there. I think that's what I'm hearing, and maybe it shouldn't be my motion, but I think that's the motion that needs to come forward. That's what I'm hearing anyway, is to figure out, if I was to summarize it, what is possible with 50th Street? What can we do? We put a lot of time and effort into it. So what's possible there? And if administration comes back and says we have to have traffic lights and this is why, then we make a decision and move on.
Okay, so I'll make the motion. Just Darji.
Sorry, I'd just like to clarify Councillor Monkoff Swain's request or motion. When you ask if the options to be brought back for 50th Street, I think if you talk to an engineer, you can bring back a multitude of options, because anything can be engineered. So I just want to clarify that we would bring back the options based on our current planning documents and studies.
Well, I don't want us to get into a situation when in 2 months you come back and say, here, based on this, and completely ignoring what we're asking here. So I understand engineers could do anything. We'll give you multiple millions of dollars and you could figure it out and go to overpasses and all that sort of stuff. I get that you're looking for a more narrow scope for this. But maybe I'm not the right person to be asking this, but what I'm hearing,
I'm looking for a narrow scope.
I want to understand what is the art of the possible here with 50th Street, and bring that back for us to consider. So I'll shut up and because I'm I'm not the one looking at the information, so I'll be quiet and see if others can provide more clarity about what other information they're looking for.
Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart. And then I'm going to try and craft this.
Yeah, my hand has kind of went stale here, Mayor, but I have about 5 maps open here, and I have answered the question that I had. I've opened the 50th Street functional study. I've looked at townships, ranges, Edmonton city limit versus what's in front of us and such now. And the 50th Street study shows that there are 2 intersections north of 510 in between there and the city limit. So my question earlier is what could change to honor the 50th Street functional study? And I've found the answer, what I believe to be the answer to that. So that's my stale hand, me rounding out my thoughts and finding the answer to the question that I was asking. Not helpful to what you want right now, but there it is.
No, actually, it helps me clarify my thoughts to be able to craft this motion. Councillor Barnhart?
Yeah, no, I think it's very helpful. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Van Newkirk. In answer to what Councillor Monkoff-Swain was saying, I would like to see the developers take on, or if that's the right place we're going with this, because this is the ASP that has to be approved by, the developer has to say they can do what it is we need to do. So this is where I need the administration to say, it's not just the administration coming back and saying what's possible, but conversation with the developer, or the consultants. Can you meet these requirements if we were to suggest this option? And I could be way off here, but it doesn't seem to me like we just want more information. We want the area structure plan to come back potentially to be in line with what is in the previous reports and the previous studies. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, and that is the crux of the question, and the motion should be something along the lines of moved by Mayor Stewart to defer second and third reading of bylaw 994-21, the Reeve Area Structure Plan, and to direct administration to bring back information outlining how previous studies were integrated into the current MDP and the current ASP before us, and bring the report back to a future council meeting. Does that provide clarification for admin?
Ms. Darjay, I'm going to refer this to you.
I think that provides us with enough clarity to bring back the information that council needs.
Okay, appreciate that. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yes, thank you. And as that information is considered to be brought back, I would really just like to make sure that the conversation, the spirit of the conversation we had tonight, the concerns that were heard tonight are brought forth in that consideration. Because one of the things that can happen is you can review all the paperwork that has happened and then spit paperwork back. But I think the thing that held us up tonight is the stuff that isn't on the papers, the concerns that were brought up by council. So I really just want to make sure that as the information is brought back, that this discussion tonight is forefront for administration. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, do you have a further item on this? No. Councillor Monkoff-Swain.
Further to the spirit of this conversation, what I heard a lot of sticking points. Part of this was in terms of speed limits and what that impact would be. So I would hope that part of that review coming back would be to give us a sense of, what these impacts would be in terms of the administration's recommendation around speed limits. I don't want to be the one setting the speed limits, not my job, but I want to make sure that that is part of the conversation. I don't want us to kick this down the road and then come back and still not have the information. So I just heard speed limits. I don't think it needs to be included in your motion, Mayor Stewart, but as part of the Councillor Van Newkirk's point around the spirit of this conversation, I'm hoping administration has heard the comments around speed limits and what that would potentially do to that road. So that's all I have. I support the motion.
CAO.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I'm going to word this correctly, but my concern now is that we're talking about a motion, and then we've got two different people weighing in, two different councillors weighing in about a spirit of a conversation. when we bring this back in whatever weeks that is, and our version of the spirit is different than your version of the spirit, we're going to be spinning our wheels again. So I think if there's something missing from that motion, we need to put some words around it.
Fair. Then I'd ask for a friendly amendment to the motion to include and what the impact would be to the speed limits of 50th Street.
Okay. I'll consider that one. I'm not quite sure where it's at. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Perhaps we need to be clear that the goal would be to reduce the amount of intersections along 50th, between 50th Street and Edmonton. Then I see that as part of the spirit of the discussion that came up. So you know, a friendly amendment to, you know, bring back the information, you know, considering reducing the number of intersections between Edmonton and Beaumont, 510 and Edmonton city limits. You know, if we need to get there to that level of detail because administration wants that, then they're going to get it. And these are the things that we need to consider in the friendly amendment. So
I'm not really going to consider that to be friendly amendment. Now we're getting out of hand.
Well, no, that's the spirit of the conversation tonight, Mayor. You know, the concerns were the number of intersections and the speed. You know, there was a lot of discussion around that. So I think that those are a couple of the sticking points, right? That's what I heard. Maybe others will weigh in with what they heard.
Right now, I'm not going to make friendly amendments. The motion's the motion. Councillor Barnhart.
Sorry, Mayor, I think you have one intention by making that motion, and I certainly was prepared to vote on that, but the administration asked for clarification. And so that's why I think you're here, Councillor, saying, well, this is what we talked about. So it's, do you and the administration agree? Do you want that information? Because I would add to it service roads. And how can we look at that? Just because we had one opinion, I think there's other opinions on that. So again, if you want the detail, here's where it is. And I'm trying to give you what the CAO has asked for.
CAO, is that helpful or not?
Well, if nothing else, it makes my point, is if we were going to come back in an X number of weeks with what is an interpretation of spirit, and I just heard 3 different versions of it. So if you want all 3 of that information, absolutely, we will include that. We'll bring it back. But that was the clarity that unfortunately I need to seek in this case. We've just spent over 3 hours debating this, and I don't want to create that situation again, because there's obviously information that you're missing. So I want to make sure we bring that information.
Okay. I'm going to go to the city clerk because I wasn't taking notes. Did she get enough notes to craft that motion for me and put it in the chat box so I can read it out?
I would have to go back and review the video. You lost me at outlining how previous studies. This is something that we can go back and craft in more detail. If we capture the spirit of what you're looking to do, we can be a little more finite with the wording as we review the tapes tomorrow.
Miranda,
we got to read the motion tonight.
What was the first part of that motion? And then I think I can finish it off.
Okay, so we've got moved by Mayor Stewart to defer second and third reading of bylaw 994-21, LaRev Area Structure Plan, and to direct administration to bring back information outlining how previous studies
were applied to the current ASP, specifically reducing the number of intersections, considering speed limits on 50th Street, and considering service roads.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh, sorry, my mic was off. Sorry, John.
No, actually, it was a perfectly timed comment. It was awesome.
I got lucky. That's all. Thanks. Sorry about it.
Yeah, no, it's perfectly timed because that's what was going through my mind. So there's the motion. There's what you're voting on. Discussion on the motion. I got to admit, I know I made it, but I'm probably going to vote against it. All right, call the question. All in favor? That carries 5-7. Mayor Stewart and Councillor Stout opposed, all others in favor.
Mayor, you said 5-7 and you meant 5-2.
5-2. Here, oh, it's late. I apologize. Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. We don't have a 12-member council.
We knew what you meant.
I did the math. All right, so that automatically defers bylaws 99621 and bylaw 100221, as you need an approved ASP to move either of those forward. So in the interest of time, I am gonna plow forward with item 7. There are no registered presentations. Moving on to business item 8A, Beaumont Community Center Advisory Committee.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. This evening, we're requesting a decision on the CCBCC Advisory Committee. Administration is recommending that Council dissolve the CCBCC Advisory Committee. Background information: in November 2016, the town opened the center with an advisory committee to provide the town with strategic direction on guidance and operations. Throughout 2016 and 17, the committee met regularly and provided admin with direction on best practices in the region for the facility, as well as direction on rental fees, sponsorship, leaseholders, and options to work towards an operating board. At the, excuse me, at the September 18th regular committee meeting of, the regular committee meeting of the advisory committee chair presented an update along with strategic plan that highlighted the committee's desire to transition to a governance board. Folks, I'm sorry, excuse me. There was consensus from the committee of the whole that the advisory committee, in conjunction with administration, should bring a business plan, including a financial plan, and should detail how a governance board would operate if the CCBCC advisory committee transitioned to this structure. The advisory committee and administration completed some work towards this, but did not result in creation of a business or operational plan. The advisory committee chair resigned in September 2019, and a month later, two members' terms expired and were not filled. The work towards a governing board ceased. However, the committee has continued to provide administration with advice on operations with the goal of becoming more cost efficient. The founding members and council member make up the current committee. There have been challenges with achieving quorum due to vacation schedules, illness, or technical difficulties. Quorum for the advisory committee, 2016 and 2017, quorum was met for all the meetings. In 2018, 4 out of the 7 meetings met quorum. In 2019, 6 out of the 9 meetings met quorum. And in 2020, 5 out of the 6 meetings met quorum. Previous council directions. On April 12, 2016, council's decision that the town of Beaumont operate the CCBCC in conjunction with an advisory committee. They were appointed to oversee the operations of the facility in accordance with the committee's terms of reference. At that same meeting, council decided to allow 3 founding members, the Lions Club, Club Beaumont, and Beaumont 50+, which was formerly St. Vital Seniors, to use the CCBCC facility at no cost for the agreed rentals. This would be 1 2-hour meeting monthly and 1 special event per year. September 18th, 2018, the Committee of the Whole received an update from the CCBCC Advisory Committee, along with their strategic plan, which highlighted the Advisory Committee's desire to transition to a governance board and to update their terms of reference. The Committee of the Whole received this as information and advised the Advisory Committee to bring back a business or operational plan detailing how the Advisory Committee would operate the facility as a governance board. January 12th, 2021, Council directed admin to review the CCBCC Advisory Committee terms of reference and bring back a recommendation to a future council meeting. The rationale on admin's recommendation: the advisory committee was created to provide the city with strategic guidance on building operations. This committee provided guidance to the city on best practices in the region, as well as providing operational advice. Together, the advisory committee and administration researched best operational practices, include looking at an operational board structure. The committee has been providing advice on operations and possible programming, rental packages, and ideas. The majority of the duties have fallen to admin as part of the daily operations. This includes allocation of rental spaces, managing tenant lease agreements, cleaning and safety practices, managing facility rental agreements, insurance and licensing, client services, and event and facility management. Administration believes that the committee has fulfilled its purpose in providing operational practices and advice to get the facility to its current operational state. The city staff conducted a survey for the founding members to gauge their thoughts on this committee. 2 of the 3 members completed the survey and provided the feedback. At this time, administration does see some overlap in the committees. The Recreation, Parks, and Culture Advisory Committee focuses on the priorities of the master plan and the 3 pillars: parks, recreation, and culture. As the Arts Council moves forward, there's another possibility of overlap on programs for arts and culture initiatives in the city. Allocation of Community Center Advisory Committee member duties. Administration recommends that the duties of the advisory committee be allocated to the Recreation, Parks, and Culture Advisory Committee and to administration as follows. Promote a safe, clean, efficient center would fall to administration under daily operations. Scheduling will fall under the approved allocation policy through administration. Programming direction will come from ideas and opportunities brought forward from the Recreation, Parks, and Culture Advisory Committee, possibly the Beaumont Arts Council and internal Beaumont staff. Programming and scheduling will follow the Recreation, Parks, and Facilities Master Plan recommendations. Budget, fees, and charges will follow the City Council's annual process. Allocating duties of these, allocating duties of this committee to the Recreation, Parks, and Culture Advisory Committee would satisfy the concerns that came up in the survey. Allowing public input to the activities of the buildings, addressing membership challenges, and providing the inclusion of having a different demographic make some of these decisions. For engagement, administration has engaged with the advisory committee through this on this topic through virtual survey. Administration also brought this recommendation to the CCBCC Advisory Committee on March 1st, 2021. The advisory committee agreed and accepted this recommendation with their request for the founding members to maintain their access to their monthly meeting and their 1 annual event at no cost. Responses we have for council tonight are that council dissolve the Beaumont Community Center Advisory Committee, or that council direct administration on how they wish to proceed. And I'm happy to take some questions if there are any.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cutler. Appreciate the presentation this evening. There is the motion before us. The council dissolve the Center Community Beaumont Community Center Advisory Committee. Is a member of council willing to move administration's recommendation? Councilor Danyluk.
So moved, your worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Danyluk.
If I may, your worship, thank you very much. As council is aware, I have been the sitting member from council on this committee for the last 2 years. I didn't miss a meeting in those 2 years, actually, but we did a number of members who did miss meetings, and quorum was not met on numerous occasions, so nothing could be actually done in terms of moving the committee forward. The committee has lost momentum over the last couple of years, despite our efforts to try and keep it going. As Mayor Strudel is aware from the surveys of citizens wanting to serve on committees in the city, the last 2 visitations on getting public members to come on the committee has resulted in nobody wanting to come on the committee from the public at whole. So unfortunately, I regret the committee has lost its momentum, and I think it's unfortunate but this action needs to be taken. And I do thank the members of the committee who gave their efforts the last number of years. And I'm glad council will also honor the 3 founding members with their requests to maintain their use of the facility at no cost as originally agreed 2 years ago. So thank you very much. I'll be supporting the motion this evening, as the committee already has it. It's as back on March 1st. Thank you.
Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I also sat on the CCBCC Advisory Committee when it was first formed, and I'm saddened by this, to be quite honest with you. And I think from day one there was a a difference of opinion about what their purpose was. It made it very difficult. But I certainly feel that it's time to do something different. But my question would be something that you said at the very end of the report, Ms. Cuthbert, and Councillor Daniluk has said it as well. Does council need to pass a motion so that the founding members maintain their monthly meetings, or is that going to be automatically handled by the administration?
I believe that motion was made on April 12th, 2016. So I believe council made that decision. So I don't know if that needs to be made again.
I'd be pleased to make it if you did need another motion, but I do think that the founding members should be recognized and the volunteers that have participated since its formation.
So I guess the question is that going to continue? Because that was part of the original agreement, or do we need to make that motion?
Sorry, Councillor Daniluk was going to weigh in. Not familiar with the first agreement.
Yes, thank you. I think it'd be a gesture from council to formally do a motion to recognize the three founding members and will have their privileges extended. It gives them a comfort zone that we have definitely listened to their concerns and recognize their past contributions. So if a formal motion is appropriate, it could be made. Of course, I would support that. Just to put it in writing, as the saying goes, that we definitely appreciate their past contributions as the founding members of the three groups that we've discussed in this RFD. So I think a formal motion does recognize their past service and guarantees their access to the facility as agreed upon back in 2016 and going forward beyond today. Thank you.
Okay, we will make that motion in a second. Discussion on dissolving the committee. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Councillor Daniluk, ask you to make, as the representative of the committee, I'd ask you to make the motion to honor the agreement with the three original founding members to maintain their one free event and monthly meeting.
Exactly, as Mayor Stewart just said a moment ago, I'll make that motion. Thank you very much. City Clerk, do you require me to be a little more formal in the wording, or have you got enough for the motion?
I think that works.
I mean, more specific if you want me to, but I think it's actually in the wording of the RFD. We could probably use that as wording if you wanted to.
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Daniluk. We can use the wording in the RFD. That would be fine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, call question. All in favor? Oops. Didn't get cleared. That carries unanimously. Appreciate council's consideration on this, and please pass along to the remaining committee members of the three founding groups council's appreciation for their service, and that we will continue to honor our agreements and their commitment to Beaumont. All right, brings us to item 8B, establishment of a regional waste management commission. Mr. Wong.
Yeah, Council, Mr. Mayor, tonight's resolution is to establish a regional waste service commission jointly with other members and specify that the name of the waste commission is Ladue and District Regional Waste Management Commission, and to specify the members of the commission are the 5 municipalities and the members of the first board, and the first chair of the commission. So basically, this is the same motion that was brought to council back almost 2 years ago on May 14th, 2019. Council approved this motion, but at the time when the Waste Management Authority made the submissions to the province to make it the commission, the MGA was being amended. So on the advice of Municipal Affairs, they said no, just hold on to it and let the legislation amendment passed. But however, with the passage of Bill 22, there are new requirements to the motion, specifically the wording. So basically, that is why the motion in front of you includes a lot of details, such as the name of the commission, the member of the commission, the board members of the commission, and even the first chair. So, and basically, this is the same motion as I mentioned, and would ask council to consider this, and then we can send it back to the management authority to move on with the application to the province.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. So essentially, this is a housekeeping motion to catch up with legislation that changed on us halfway through in similar, very much similar to the Transit Services Commission.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I'm not going to read it as proposed, but I'm going to request that since Councillor Stout sits on that committee, that he make the motion as in the RFD.
I'm happy to make that motion. I was going to offer to do it anyway. Yes, I'll make the motion as stated in the RFD, and I'll observe in passing that I regret the necessity to do this, but as it's essentially exactly the same as it was nearly 2 years ago. In fact, more than 2 years ago. No, nearly 2 years ago. But that was occasioned by direction from the provincial government and was unavoidable, really.
Thank you very much. On the motion, Councillor Hendricks.
Yeah, just want to congratulate all involved. This has been a long-standing conversation since I've been on council to get us out of the authority mode and into a commission mode. And this shows significant cooperation with our regional partners to get this done. We've had no end of auditors that have put it on our books as a note to reader that there was a potential issue with the authority. And certainly we've had lawyers in front of us making the case why it should be changed. So congrats to all those. And I think it's a good news story. So thank you.
Seeing no further hands raised, call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Brings us to item 8C, 2021 budget amendments. Mr. DeBlanco.
Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and council. Before you is a report requesting approval to amend the 2021 operating and capital budgets. If approved, the municipal tax levy will remain at 0% as was approved on December 8th, 2020. There have been a few adjustments to the 2021 budget since December, notably approval of 2020 carry forward items in February, as well as the approval of the Beaumont Innovation Park project. These items are reflected on attachments 1 and 2 in the subtotal under approved budget. Amendments proposed by administration fall into 4 categories. First being economic updates, others being effects from other government entities, council directed amendments, and administrative items. Starting off with economic updates on the operating budget. Since council approved the 2021 municipal operating budget, admin has finalized the overall assessment and growth numbers for the 2021 tax year. These numbers have resulted in an increase in real growth revenue of $199,500. Just to be clear, this is independent of the tax levy increase of 0%. Administration is recommending that the taxation revenue budget be increased by this amount, as well as a corresponding transfer to the financial stabilization reserve. There's no economic amendments proposed for the utility budget. On the capital budget, the library's original ask was in the amount of $150,000 for the expansion design. The motion to approve the project during the workshop was $100,000. Upon receipt of proposals, the additional funds will likely be required for the project. Therefore, an amendment has been included in the capital budget. As far as adjustments from other government entities, items in this category are those that result from decisions made by other orders of government, specifically federal and provincial, that would have an impact on the city of Beaumont's budget. The amended budget does not include any items for this category. Next category being council directed. Admin has included the grant program that was proposed in a notice of motion at the previous council meeting. This item's listed on tonight's agenda as 13A. Approving the amended budget would approve the funding for this initiative. In the fall, council approved a notice of motion to bring a comprehensive watershed plan or study forward to budget deliberations to address overland drainage issues on the southwest side of the city. In November 2020, administration performed debris removal in this area, and any potential benefits of that work are yet to be determined. For that reason, administration has not included an amendment for this item in attachment 1 in the municipal operating budget. It would be administration's recommendation that the city would benefit from a stormwater master plan that considers stormwater management and drainage for the entire city, as it can then consider all of the drainage courses and bases comprehensively rather than focusing on one specific area. A proposal for this plan is incorporated in the 5-year financial plan and will be brought forth to 2022 budget deliberations. Moving down, the next category is administrative adjustments. There's one for includes an administrative adjustment to include the mental health relief fund approved by council during budget deliberations in the amount of $35,000. This item's already approved. The dollar value of this item is just needed to get captured in the totals. On the capital budget, there are a few administrative items with regards to funding sources. These adjustments are to ensure that the approved capital projects are eligible to be funded under grant programs. When combined with some 2020 year-end adjustments, the net effect of these amendments will result in the 2021 year-end balances of grants and reserves being comparable to the forecast in the approved budget package. Moving down to the budget and financial impact. As stated previously, with the approval of these amendments included in attachment 1 and 2, the average percentage increase of the municipal property tax levy for 2021 will remain at 0%. I see there's an error in that section. It should read 2021, not 2022. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions council may have.
Okay. Are there questions from council for administration before we make this motion? Councilor Hendricks.
Worship, thank you. So by approving the ask here on the amendments, does that also include for, like, for example, on your watershed study, you're putting the money in, but you're saying don't proceed? Just tell me how that works procedurally.
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, the money for the watershed study is not included in the amendments.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking. So if I look at page 205, so you're at 205, Mr. DeMichael?
Not currently.
Okay, so you, agenda page 205. And it says incremental new budget amortization 2021 expense is 100,000 net 100,000. Maybe
so
explain
through
to me
to Councillor Hendricks, that's the unfunded. I believe at the top of the page says unfunded. So that's what that project would cost.
Right.
And as stated in the report, administration is not recommending that this be approved.
I fully understand the justification, Mr. DeMichael. Like I see what you've stated, but it does have a line item for the cash. It doesn't say zero. Have I got that right?
I'm just waiting for that page to load on my computer. Apologies.
So let me, okay, then I'll speed along here. So if I understand it correctly, I mean, the type on this needed a magnifying glass, but made it work. It is administration's recommendation that council not approve this budget request at this time. The debris removal was completed in November, and any potential benefits of that would not have been yet determined. Further, Beaumont would benefit from a stormwater master plan that considers stormwater management and drainage for all of Beaumont as it can consider all of the drainage courses and basins comprehensively rather than one specific area. A proposal for this plan will be brought forward to the 2022 budget deliberation. So a couple things come to mind. One is is there yet another stormwater management plan that's coming to council, or is the one that was done, or at least put together by the previous councils, is it being modified or updated? So I'm surprised by this. And secondly, what this will do in terms of timing, this is going to leave us as a council and find its way to a new council. So in terms of timing, so I'm concerned that this will fall off the radar as a result. If say 7 of us are replaced, help me out here with the previous and I mean extensive stormwater management engineering pieces that we did, and why we wouldn't do it now. And I believe we also answered an email from Mrs. Goudreau about this specific topic. So we'll have to go back to her with a different response then.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hendricks. So on this particular item, the request was, or the original request from council was to bring back an item to budget for just one small study area. And this is in our annexation lands. It is administration's recommendation that we bring back a larger study that takes into account all of the annex lands, how this basin fits into that as well, so that we're looking at it comprehensively. The Black Mud, White Mud study, creek study, does indicate this as one of the items to be done. And so we would recommend that we bring back information for consideration at the 2022 budget deliberations.
Okay, so just bear with me. So the Irvine, Black Mud, White Mud, North Saskatchewan basin study. I don't know what you want to call it, but I believe that at least it's had one iteration, one process, one completion. Is this an update to that?
We would have to take a look at the report to see if it's just an update or if it would require more intensive work. And that information would be brought back for deliberation at the 2022 budget.
Right. So to be fair to this council, in the last 4 years, the drainage basin discussion never did find its way back to us. We heard things were being done, parts of it were being undertaken. Never did find out exactly what we've accomplished over this last 4 years from LeBlanc Canal on. Is this more of that?
Do you mean the study that would be proposed for 2022?
Yeah, we have, we've studied this thing to death, and we have, especially after the big 1 in 800 year, rains event that we had. And we had 2 competing really civil engineering teams that came back with recommendations, and that's how we got to the 1 in 100 year piece. And then we had the basin discussion that took us right from Irvine, Black Mud, White Mud, all the way to the North Saskatchewan, and all the landowner discussions all the way through that whole piece. I'm hearing we're still on that, or we're moving forward with that, or we're expand that. We had Alberta Environment, we had all the open houses, we had lots of intel. We had surface issues in terms of where we would land, in terms of overland drainage. We had it all nailed down. So just wondering, my concern is that if we say no to this, like 4 years will go by, and whatever happens this next term, this is not going to happen. I think this is a very site-specific problem. It needs to be dealt with. And yes, we spent $15,000 and we cleaned out some shrubbery, but something more specific has to be done.
Well, you're correct. We did remove all of the debris out of the canal, and that was completed in the fall. So we haven't actually experienced the complete runoff or know how that is now functioning. The canal was there for a reason to function in a certain way. So we cleaned it out, and now we need to determine how it's going to function. So I think doing a study at this point in time is likely premature. Going back to the Black Mud, White Mud Creek study, one of the recommendations out of that is a more comprehensive watershed study. And so that's what we would bring back, is the recommendation that comes out of that original study to do the watershed study.
Okay, so all I'm saying politely is that, for these property owners, that's a long way down the road. I mean, before that study gets going and done and results and process, you're not, even next term's not going to get it done. That's my concern.
It is likely that, sorry. If I may, I just want to say that a current study would take about 12 to 18 months. So to put that timeline out there.
Okay, and so I guess that's where I'm at. If we really wish this work to proceed forward, if we fund this $100,000 as would that advance the work forward to get this thing moving?
That's right.
Because I think council's been wanting to see this work move. Are you prepared to make a motion to that effect, Councillor Hendricks?
So moved.
Discussion on the motion.
Repeat the motion, please, John, just for clarity. Sorry, please.
The council fund the watershed study as outlined in attachment 3.
Thank you.
So I'm going to let people clear their hands unless they want to speak to this particular motion. And before I do that, I am going to go back to Mr. Dollar and ask him how this, is there a way to fund this without affecting the tax rate?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that was going to be my question for clarification. Again, not really clear on the motion from Councillor Hendricks, but if it is to fund this, then yeah, there would need to be a funding source attached to it if we didn't want to impact the tax rate. Now, I guess that's up to Councillor Hendricks in terms of what he would propose in his motion. If there is a desire not to impact the tax rate, then I would suggest from reserves.
Okay. Councillor Hendricks, you can amend the motion to be from reserves.
Happy to amend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGovern.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just surprised as to where we are. Good catch, Councillor Hendricks, for finding it within the document. I guess my concern is we're almost 4 hours in. I don't know the impact of this reserves, all this stuff. Before we've tried to bring financial things outside the budget process, and I was told no, like we went through a budget for a reason. I think in order for me to vote yes, I'd like to get a better understanding from administration on their recommendation on it. So I don't think, I'm not saying no to it, but maybe a suggestion to bring this forward, or direct administration to bring it back as a budget amendment down the road. Like we're 4 hours in, I'm not sure I've got any awareness of what the impact of the reserves are, or all that sort of stuff. That this is a big chunk of cake here, and yeah, I'm not saying yes or no to it. I don't think we should be making that decision here at the end of close to the end of a 4 hour meeting. My 2 cents on that.
Mr. Dollar, the impact is when's the drop deadline date that we need to be to pass these amendments in order to get out the tax rolls or tax notices?
So I guess that's why administration has the report in front of you tonight, is in terms of getting the tax rate bylaw finalized. That comes forward at the next council meeting, so at the end of the month, so that we can then get the tax notices out in the appropriate time. And so, yeah, tonight would be the night to make the decisions on any kind of financial or budgetary items for the 2021 budget. that could impact the tax rate. Now, if this is something that's deemed to be outside of impacting the tax rate, there's an ability to, make a decision in a meeting in May and adjust or amend the budget then. But typically the process is to bring this budget amendment report as the last opportunity to impact or influence the 21 budget at this time, so that we can then do the tax rate bylaw and get those notices out to the citizens.
Well, I'm getting really conscious of the time. It's 9:42 and this meeting is scheduled to expire here in 18 minutes. And we have a fairly significant agenda anyway. So right now I'm thinking this meeting is going to expire and we're going to wind up picking this up prior to COTW next week. Could we, if that happens, could we make these decisions next week, or should we plow through and then bring this specific item back to budget for discussion next week?
I think if there's a desire for council to have a meeting next week prior to committee of the whole, and Mr. DeBlanco can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we'd still be okay to make the decision next week on the budget and still be able to bring forward the tax rate bylaw at the appropriate time, get the notices out, still on schedule. So I think the short answer to your question, Mr. Mayor, is yes, next week should give us enough time.
Okay. Councilor Van Newkirk, comments?
Yeah, not on that topic. I was going to ask about an item in the description on the attachment.
Okay, we're still on. We're on Councilor Hendrick's motion, and we're mulling over whether to defer. Councilor Barnhart.
On Councillor Hendrick's motion, I think it's too late to be having a budget discussion, and I honestly think that there's reasons why we used to have what we called the spring budget retreat, where we could put all of our issues out on the table and look at them from one last kick at the cap before the tax roll is sent out. And I have a couple items I want to bring up, so I don't think in 18 minutes we're going to get it done. And if we're going to postpone it, then let's postpone the whole thing till next week.
Yeah, I'm sort of agreeing with you, Councilor. If we're going to let the meeting expire, then we're going to need to let the meeting expire. Councilor Mungo Swain.
Yeah, nothing to add. If that's the direction we're going, I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to make that discussion. I'm not prepared.
I'm watching the byplay. I'm watching tired council members. I'm watching tired staff members. I'm watching. I don't think this is a really good opportune moment to get into extensive budget discussions. We have some heavy things coming in the closed session. In order to proceed past 10 o'clock, we do need a motion to extend, and 5 out of 7 members must vote in favor of it. I'm not prepared to make that motion, and I'm not going to vote in favor of it when it happens, watching what's going on here. So at this point, I'm going to move that we table the remainder of the agenda items and pick them up at a special meeting prior to committee of the whole next week. Discussion on that motion. Councilor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, just process-wise, just wondering, we had a motion on the floor from Councillor Hendricks, so I think we have to deal with that before the next one comes.
See, I'm tired too. I'm gonna ask Councillor Hendricks if he would withdraw his motion so we can pick this conversation up next week.
Right, so that's why I raised my hand, and I'd be happy to withdraw.
Thank you. Owing to the fact that we do have 18 minutes, I will hit items, not the decision on my notice of motion, but I will ask if councillors want to make some notice of motion And some quick statements before we adjourn. All right, thank you, Councilor Hendricks, for withdrawing your motion. So motion to allow the, hang on a sec, how am I gonna do this? Motion to suspend the remainder of the meeting except for item 13B, which is councilor's notices of motion to defer the remainder of the meeting next week to a special council meeting to be before the committee of the whole meeting, and we'll push committee of the whole back if we have to. Did that get clear, or did I just confuse everybody?
I'm clear. You're saying we're going to pick the meeting up. We're going to get through one more item.
Yeah, we're going to go. We're going to ask if any councilors have notice of motion, and then we're going to adjourn this meeting.
Mayor, are we also having the closed session or not?
No, that's deferring the whole thing. We're going to defer the whole thing and pick it up next week. We're going to pick it right up from 8C.
So would that special council meeting be at 5 p.m. next Tuesday?
That is the intention, is to have the council meeting preceding the committee of the whole meeting, and the committee of the whole will proceed right after. So that will be a long night. All right. Discussion on the motion. All in favor? And that carries unanimously, which brings us to item 13B. Do any members of council wish to make a notice of motion this evening? Councilor Monkhouse.
Yeah, sorry, I hit the green check mark as opposed to the raise hand, but here we go. I'm going to post it in the chat so everyone can see it. The motion that I'm going to make is as follows. That council directs administration to establish a steering committee focused on the development of an arts facility in Beaumont that reports to council. The steering committee should be established by May 31st, 2021, and consists of up to 10 members from the public, experts in arts facility construction and administration. B, work with the steering committee to establish goals and objectives for the success of the steering committee and report back to the July 2021 committee of the whole. And C, identify an appropriate budget amount to effectively run the steering committee and an appropriate revenue stream to fund the steering committee, and report this information back to the July 2021 committee of the whole.
Okay, we accept that notice of motion. And for clarity, that notice of motion will be dealt with at our April 27th meeting, as a special meeting on the 20th is simply to pick up the remaining agenda items we didn't get to tonight. All right. Thank you all for a very long night. We had a great discussion surrounding matters that are very pivotal to the future development of Beaumont, and I look forward to continuing this meeting with you all next week. At this point, the meeting stands